"Sir, we can't approve this," the manager said, barely looking at my application. "You don't fit our profile." I stood up, buttoned my jacket, and walked out. 24 hours later, his boss called him into a meeting. I was sitting at the head of the table. "About that profile," I said. "Let's discuss your severance package. Would you do the same if you were in my shoes?" Now let me tell you the whole story of what happened, but before I continue, please hit the subscribe button, like, share, and comment where you are listening from. And also, do well to listen to this story to the very end because you will gain a lot from this story. The air conditioning in First Regional Bank hummed with that sterile coldness that only corporate buildings seem to get right. Marcus Bennett sat in the waiting area outside Gregory Whitmore's office, his fingers drumming against the leather armrest of a chair that probably cost more than his monthly rent. He'd worn his best suit today, the charcoal gray one he'd bought for his father's funeral 3 years ago. It still fit perfectly, tailored to his broad shoulders, pressed crisp that morning by his own hands because he couldn't afford to take it to the cleaners. 43 minutes he'd been sitting there. 43 minutes watching Gregory's secretary, a thin white woman with glasses that sat on the bridge of her nose like a judgment, glance at him every few seconds like he might steal the plastic plant in the corner. Marcus checked his phone again. The email confirmation said his appointment was at 10 a.m. It was now 10:47. He could see Gregory through the glass walls of his office, laughing on the phone, feet kicked up on his mahogany desk like he owned the world. In a way, he did. At least, he owned the power to change Marcus's life with a single signature. "Mr. Bennett?" The secretary's voice cut through his thoughts, sharp and dismissive. "Mr. Whitmore will see you now." Marcus stood, straightening his tie, trying to shake off the feeling that he was walking into a courtroom instead of a loan officer's office. He'd rehearsed this meeting 100 times. His business plan was solid, revolutionary even. A tech platform connecting Black-owned businesses with conscious consumers, investors, and resources. He had the prototype, beta users, early traction, and a wait list of 3,000 businesses ready to join. All he needed was $250,000 to scale. He'd saved $20,000 himself, working 3 jobs, coding late into the night after driving Uber all day. This loan wasn't a handout. It was an investment in something that could change communities. Gregory didn't stand when Marcus entered. He barely looked up from his computer screen. "Marcus Bennett," Gregory said, his voice carrying that particular brand of condescension that certain people perfect over years of having power over others. "Have a seat." Marcus sat, placing his leather portfolio on the desk between them. "Thank you for meeting with me, Mr. Whitmore. I know you're busy, so I'll get right to it." "Before you start," Gregory interrupted, finally looking at Marcus with pale blue eyes that seemed to catalog and dismiss him in the same glance. "I want to set realistic expectations. I've reviewed your application, and I'll be honest with you, it's a long shot." The words landed like a slap. Marcus felt something tighten in his chest, but he kept his face neutral. "With all due respect, I don't think you've had time to really review it. The platform I'm building addresses a $30 billion gap in the market." "Right, right," Gregory waved his hand dismissively. "Another app, another tech startup. Do you know how many of these I see every week?" "This isn't just another app," Marcus said, leaning forward, pulling out his laptop. "If you look at the data, let me save us both some time," Gregory cut him off again, and this time there was something almost gleeful in his interruption, like he enjoyed this part. "Your credit score is 680. Not terrible, but not great. You have 20,000 in savings, which shows discipline, I'll give you that. But you have no collateral, no property, no significant assets. You're asking me to loan you $250,000 based on what? An idea? Some code? Marcus's jaw tightened. Based on a working product with proven user engagement and a clear path to profitability. I have projections, Gregory repeated, laughing without humor. Everyone has projections, Marcus. Can I call you Marcus? Look, let me be frank with you. You seem like a smart guy. You probably are smart. But smart isn't enough. This bank has fiduciary responsibilities. We can't just hand out money to every person with a dream and a PowerPoint presentation. The condescension dripped from every word. Marcus could feel it coating him, sticky and degrading. I'm not asking for a handout, Marcus said, his voice steady despite the rage building behind his ribs. I'm asking for a loan, with interest, which I will pay back. I have a detailed business plan. Let me ask you something, Gregory said, leaning back in his chair, fingers steepled like he was about to deliver profound wisdom. Do you have any experience running a business? Any track record of success in the industry? I've worked in tech for 8 years. I was a senior developer at a developer, so an employee. That's very different from being an entrepreneur, you understand? There's a certain mentality required, a certain background that predicts success. And there it was, subtle as a knife between the ribs. Marcus felt the heat rising up his neck. He'd heard these words before, dressed in different language, a certain background. He knew exactly what Gregory meant. I've done everything right, Marcus said, and he hated how defensive he sounded, hated that he was explaining himself to this man. I have the skills, the knowledge, the product, and the market research. What more do you need? Gregory sighed, like Marcus was making this harder than it needed to be. Look, I'm going to level with you because I think you deserve honesty. The kind of loan you're asking for? It requires collateral, real estate, investment accounts, something we can secure the loan against. You don't have that, and without it, he spread his hands in a gesture of helplessness that was anything but helpless. My hands are tied. I have a co-signer lined up, Marcus said, pulling out another document. A mentor who's willing to… Who? Gregory didn't even look at the paper. Dr. James Crawford. He's a professor at… I need to see net worth statements, asset documentation, not just a signature from some academic. Marcus, I'm trying to help you here. I'm trying to save you from disappointment. Maybe you should start smaller. Get a job at an established company. Work your way up. Build some capital the traditional way. Not everyone is meant to be a business owner. There's no shame in that. The room felt like it was shrinking. Marcus could hear his heartbeat in his ears, a slow, thunderous rhythm that matched the rage he was fighting to keep contained. He thought about his grandmother, who'd cleaned houses for 40 years and still died with nothing. He thought about his father, who'd worked in a factory until it closed, then drove a taxi until his heart gave out at 62, working traditional jobs, building capital the traditional way. Dying with nothing to show but calloused hands and deferred dreams. So you're denying my application, Marcus said flatly. I'm denying this application, yes. But I'd encourage you to reapply in a few years when your financial situation is more established. Gregory stood, extending his hand for a shake that Marcus couldn't bring himself to take. After an awkward moment, Gregory dropped it. I'll be honest with you, Marcus, and I hope you take this as constructive criticism. People like you, and there it was again, barely concealed, tend to overestimate your readiness. The business world requires a certain pedigree, certain networks, certain understanding of how things work. You can't just code your way into success. Maybe focus on building some of those foundations first. Marcus stood slowly, gathering his documents with hands that wanted to shake but didn't. People like me, he repeated, letting the words hang in the air. Gregory had the decency to look slightly uncomfortable. I just mean, I know exactly what you mean. Marcus turned and walked out of that office with his spine straight and his head high, but inside, something was crumbling. He passed the secretary who didn't look up, past the other customers in the waiting area, most of them white, most of them looking comfortable and entitled in this space, past the smiling tellers behind their stations, the security guard who tracked his movement to the door like he might be a threat. He made it to his car before the reality crashed over him. 6 months of work, 6 months of hope, 6 months of believing that if he just did everything right, if he just worked hard enough, if he just proved himself, the doors would open. But the doors stayed locked, and men like Gregory Whitmore held all the keys. Marcus sat in his 2007 Honda Accord, hands gripping the steering wheel, staring at the marble facade of First Regional Bank with its gold lettering and its promise of building dreams together. The irony tasted bitter. His phone buzzed. A text from his sister, Janine. How'd it go? He couldn't bring himself to type the truth yet. Couldn't admit that he'd failed. Couldn't explain how Gregory had looked at him. Not at his business plan, not at his credentials, not at his prototype, but at his skin, and decided the risk was too high. Marcus started the car, but before he pulled out, he took one long look at that bank. At Gregory's office window, where he could see the man already on another call, already on to his next appointment, already having forgotten the man whose dreams he'd just crushed. People like me, Marcus whispered to himself. He didn't know it yet, but those words would become fuel. They would burn in his chest every sleepless night for the next 18 hours. They would drive him to make a phone call that would change everything. They would transform humiliation into something else entirely. But right now, sitting in his decade-old car, Marcus just felt tired. Tired of fighting. Tired of proving himself. Tired of being seen as a risk instead of an opportunity. He drove away from First Regional Bank, past the pristine downtown with its coffee shops and boutiques, through the neighborhoods that got progressively browner and more run down the further he got from the financial district. He drove home to his one-bedroom apartment where his laptop was waiting, where his dreams were documented in lines of code and spreadsheets that apparently meant nothing to men like Gregory Whitmore. That night, Marcus sat on his balcony overlooking the city, drinking cheap whiskey straight from the bottle, watching the lights twinkle in the downtown towers where people like Gregory made decisions about people like him. His phone was full of unanswered texts. His sister, his mother, his business partner Devin, who'd been waiting to hear if they got the funding. He couldn't answer them yet, couldn't admit failure, couldn't face their disappointment or worse, their pity. Around midnight, Marcus did something he'd been avoiding. He opened his email and started drafting a message to the one person he'd sworn he'd never ask for help. The one person he'd left behind when he decided to make it on his own. The one person who'd told him 10 years ago that the world wouldn't make it easy and that sometimes pride was a luxury black men couldn't afford. His uncle Raymond. Raymond Bennett, who disappeared from family gatherings 15 years ago when Marcus was still in high school. Raymond, who his mother spoke about in whispers and his father had forbidden anyone to mention. Raymond, who'd left the family business and the family altogether, who'd gone to New York and made money doing things nobody talked about. Raymond, who sent Marcus a congratulations card when he graduated MIT, a card with no return address but with a phone number written on the inside flap and 3 words, "When you're ready." Marcus had never been ready, had never wanted to owe Raymond anything, had never wanted to be connected to whatever dark corners Raymond operated in. But tonight, sitting in the wreckage of his legitimate dreams, Marcus pulled out that card from where he'd kept it hidden in his desk drawer. The number was still there, faded but legible. He stared at his phone for 20 minutes before he finally dialed. It rang 3 times. Then a voice he barely remembered, deeper and rougher than in his memories. "I was wondering when you'd call." "Uncle Ray," Marcus said, and his voice cracked slightly. "I need help." "I know you do, nephew. Tell me what happened." And Marcus did. He told him everything about the business, the loan application, Gregory Whitmore's condescension, the way he'd been dismissed and diminished and denied. He told him about the rage and the helplessness and the feeling that no matter how hard he worked, no matter how much he achieved, there would always be men like Gregory standing between him and his dreams. Raymond listened without interrupting. When Marcus finally finished, there was a long silence on the line. Then, "What's the name of the bank?" "First Regional." "But Uncle Ray, I don't want you to—" "And the manager's name?" "Gregory Whitmore." "Listen, I'm just looking for advice. Maybe a different lender, you know. I don't want—" "Marcus, listen to me carefully. I want you to go back to that bank tomorrow at exactly the same time. Wear the same suit. Request the same meeting with the same man. Can you do that?" "What? Why would I—" "Can you do that?" Marcus hesitated. There was something in Raymond's voice, something cold and certain that made him nervous. "Yeah, I can do that. But don't ask questions. Just trust me. Go to the meeting. And Marcus, when things start happening, no matter how surprised you are, don't let them see it. Keep your face calm. Keep your power. Understand?" "I don't understand any of this." "You will. Get some sleep, nephew. Tomorrow's going to be a very interesting day." The line went dead. Marcus sat there holding his phone, feeling like he'd just set something in motion that he didn't fully comprehend. Raymond had sounded different, not like the uncle who used to sneak him candy at family barbecues, like someone else entirely. Someone who moved in shadows and made things happen with phone calls. Marcus should have felt afraid, should have called back and canceled whatever this was. Instead, he felt something he hadn't felt since walking out of Gregory's office. He felt hope, and something else, something darker and more satisfying. He felt like maybe, just maybe, Gregory Whitmore was about to learn that some people shouldn't be dismissed, that some people have uncles who operate in different worlds, that some people are exactly as dangerous as you feared they might be. Marcus finished his whiskey and went inside. He'd go to the bank tomorrow. He'd request that meeting. He'd sit in that same chair and face that same condescension. But something told him it wouldn't feel the same at all. Something told him tomorrow was going to be the day that Gregory Whitmore realized he'd made a terrible mistake, the kind of mistake that changes everything. Marcus woke up at 6 a.m. with his heart already racing. He'd barely slept, his mind spinning with possibilities and anxieties about what Raymond had set in motion. Part of him wanted to forget the whole thing, to chalk up yesterday's humiliation as a learning experience and move on. Find another lender. Find another way. But another part of him, the part that had inherited his grandmother's stubbornness and his father's quiet rage, wanted to walk back into that bank and see what Raymond had planned. He showered, shaved carefully, put on the same charcoal suit. Looking at himself in the mirror, Marcus barely recognized the man staring back. His eyes held something new, something harder than yesterday's hope. Yesterday he'd walked into that bank as a supplicant. Today he wasn't sure what he was. His phone rang at 7:30 a.m. Unknown number. "Yeah? Marcus, it's Raymond. You're going through with this?" "I don't even know what this is." He heard his uncle's low chuckle. "You'll figure it out soon enough. Remember what I said. No matter what happens, keep your composure. Men like Gregory Whitmore respect power, and they only recognize it when they see you not flinch. You flinch, you lose everything." "You're being cryptic as hell, Uncle Ray." "I'm being careful. Listen, after today, things are going to move fast. You'll have decisions to make. Big ones. But first, Go handle your business. Show that man who denied you exactly who Marcus Bennett is. And who am I? You're my nephew. That's all he needs to know." The line went dead again. Marcus stared at his phone, feeling like he was in a movie where he didn't know the plot. He thought about calling Janine, telling her what was happening, but he didn't even know how to explain it. So instead, he pocketed his phone, grabbed his leather portfolio with the same business plan that had been rejected yesterday, and headed to First Regional Bank. The morning traffic was thick, giving Marcus too much time to think, too much time to second guess. What if Raymond was just blowing smoke? What if this was some elaborate psychological tactic? Show up again, demonstrate resilience. Somehow that would change Gregory's mind? That didn't make sense. Men like Gregory didn't change their minds because you showed up twice, unless something else changed. Marcus parked in the same spot he'd used yesterday. The bank looked the same, imposing marble, gold lettering, that corporate sterility that screamed old money and older prejudices. He sat in his car for 5 minutes, breathing, centering himself. Whatever happened in there, he wouldn't give Gregory the satisfaction of seeing him rattled. At 9:55 a.m., Marcus walked through those glass doors. The atmosphere felt different immediately. He couldn't quite place it, but there was a tension in the air, a buzz of unusual activity. The tellers were huddled in small groups, whispering. The security guard who'd watched him so carefully yesterday barely glanced at him. And Gregory's secretary, the woman with the judgy glasses, looked stressed, her usually pristine desk covered in papers, her phone ringing off the hook. Marcus approached her desk. "Good morning. I'm here to see Mr. Whitmore." She looked up at him, and there was something different in her expression. Not quite fear, but definitely not the dismissive superiority from yesterday. "Do you have an appointment, Mr. Bennett?" "Marcus Bennett. And no, I don't have an appointment, but I think he'll want to see me." She opened her mouth to argue, to tell him that wasn't how things worked, but then her phone rang again. She answered it, listened for a moment, and her face went pale. She hung up without saying goodbye. "Actually, Mr. Bennett, if you could wait just one moment." She stood abruptly and hurried into Gregory's office, closing the door behind her. Marcus stood there, confused, watching through the glass walls as she spoke rapidly to Gregory. He saw Gregory's face transform, confusion, then dismissal, then what looked like anger, then something else, something that might have been panic. Gregory looked up and his eyes found Marcus through the glass. For a moment, their gazes locked, and Marcus saw it. The exact moment Gregory realized something had changed. The exact moment the power dynamic shifted. The secretary emerged, flustered. "Mr. Whitmore will see you now. Right away." Marcus walked into that office for the second time in 2 days, but it felt like walking into a different universe. Gregory stood this time. He was on his feet, his expensive suit slightly rumpled, his tie loosened, sweat visible at his temples, despite the aggressive air conditioning. "Marcus," he said, and there was none of yesterday's condescension in his voice. "Please, sit down. Can I get you coffee? Water? Anything?" Marcus sat slowly, saying nothing, watching Gregory with the kind of calm Raymond had instructed him to maintain. Inside, his mind was racing. What the hell was happening? Gregory sat down, cleared his throat, shuffled papers on his desk that didn't need shuffling. I've been reviewing your application again this morning, more thoroughly this time, and I think I may have been too hasty yesterday in my assessment." Marcus kept his face neutral. "Is that right?" Yes, absolutely. Your platform, this app connecting Black businesses, it's actually quite innovative. The market research is solid, very solid, and your technical credentials are impressive. MIT, senior developer experience? I don't know how I overlooked that yesterday." You didn't overlook it, Marcus said quietly. You dismissed it. Gregory flinched. I, Perhaps I didn't give it the consideration it deserved, but I'd like to make that right. I'd like to approve your loan application. The words hung in the air. Marcus should have felt elated, victorious, but instead, he felt cold. Because this wasn't about his business plan suddenly being better. This was about something else entirely, something Raymond had done with a single phone call. What changed? Marcus asked. Gregory's jaw worked. I'm sorry? What changed between yesterday and today? Did my credit score improve overnight? Did I suddenly acquire collateral you find acceptable? Did my background become the right pedigree? Marcus, what changed? Gregory looked down at his desk, and when he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. I received some calls this morning, from the board, from investors. There's been interest in you, in your company, high-level interest, the kind of interest that makes people take notice. What kind of people? Important people. People with significant investment portfolios. People who apparently believe in your platform and want to ensure you have the resources to succeed. Marcus leaned back in his chair, understanding dawning. Raymond. Raymond had made calls. But not just any calls. Calls to people with the kind of power that made bank managers sweat. Calls from investors or board members or whatever network Raymond had built in his 15 years of absence from family gatherings. So you're approving my loan because someone told you to. I'm approving your loan because it's a sound investment, Gregory said, but they both knew that was a lie. Look, Marcus, I'm trying to help you here. This is what you wanted, isn't it? The funding to grow your business? What I wanted was to be evaluated fairly yesterday. What I wanted was for my work to speak for itself. What I wanted was to not be dismissed because of assumptions you made about me the moment I walked through that door. Gregory's face went red. Don't, Marcus cut him off. Don't insult both of us by pretending yesterday didn't happen the way it happened. You looked at me and saw a risk. You heard my voice and decided I wasn't serious. You saw someone who didn't have the right background and right pedigree, and you decided I wasn't worth your time or this bank's money. Marcus, please, how much did they offer you to change your mind? Marcus asked suddenly. Or was it a threat? Did someone threaten your position? Your bonuses? What makes a man like you suddenly discover that a black entrepreneur might actually be worth investing in? Gregory stood, hands raised in a placating gesture that only made Marcus angrier. Look, I admit I made a mistake yesterday. I should have looked more carefully at your application. I should have given you more time. I'm trying to correct that mistake now. Marcus stood too, and despite being roughly the same height, he felt taller than Gregory in that moment. I don't want your guilt money. I don't want a loan you're giving me because someone scared you into it. I don't want your fake enthusiasm for a business plan you couldn't be bothered to read properly. Then what do you want? Gregory snapped, frustration breaking through his professional veneer. I want you to understand something, Marcus said, leaning forward, hands on Gregory's desk. You don't get to play gatekeeper. You don't get to decide who's worthy based on how they look or sound. You don't get to crush people's dreams because they don't fit your narrow view of who deserves success. And when those people find another way, when they find power you didn't know they had, you don't get to suddenly pretend you were always on their side. Are you refusing the loan? Gregory asked, incredulous. Marcus paused. Was he? He needed that money. His business needed that money. But taking it from Gregory now, after this, felt like accepting crumbs from a table he'd been barred from yesterday. His phone buzzed. A text from Raymond. Take the meeting at 2 p.m. Conference room. Don't go to the bank. What meeting? But before Marcus could process this, Gregory's secretary knocked frantically on the door and burst in without waiting for permission. Mr. Whitmore, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but there's an emergency board meeting being called. Right now, you need to go to the main conference room immediately. Gregory's face went from red to pale. What? I didn't receive any notification of, it was called 5 minutes ago. The chairman is on his way. They want you there now. Gregory looked at Marcus, then at his secretary, confusion and fear warring on his face. Marcus, I'm sorry. I need to handle this. Can we reschedule? This afternoon? Don't bother, Marcus said, gathering his portfolio. I'll be in touch. He walked out of that office, through the now chaotic main floor of the bank where tellers and managers were rushing around with unusual urgency, past the secretary who'd stopped answering phones, through the glass doors into the bright morning sun. Marcus made it halfway to his car before his phone rang again. Raymond. Did you refuse the loan? His uncle asked without preamble. Did you seriously just threaten that man's job? I didn't threaten anything. I made some calls, had some conversations with some people who have interests in that bank. People who were very interested to hear how one of their branch managers was treating potential clients. People who started asking questions about approval rates and demographic patterns, and whether Gregory Whitmore was a liability to the bank's reputation and bottom line. Uncle Ray, what are you into? Who are these people? Raymond was quiet for a moment. You really want to know? Marcus thought about it. Did he? Part of him suspected that whatever Raymond was involved in operated in moral gray areas at best, illegal at worst. Money laundering, maybe. Corporate manipulation. The kind of power that came from knowing where bodies were buried, literal or figurative. Not right now, Marcus admitted, but I need to understand what just happened. What happened is, you got a small taste of how the world really works. Men like Gregory, they don't respond to merit or fairness or justice. They respond to power. You showed up with a good business plan and a black face and they saw risk. I showed up with influence and connections, and suddenly they saw opportunity. The only difference was power. But I didn't earn it. Someone else, you, did it for me. You earned it by being my nephew, by being brilliant, by building something worth protecting. Marcus, you need to understand something. The game is rigged. It always has been. Your father tried to play by the rules, and where did it get him? Dead at 62 with nothing. Your grandmother played by the rules, and she died cleaning someone else's house. At some point, you have to decide if you're going to keep begging for a seat at a table that doesn't want you, or if you're going to build your own table. Is that what this meeting is about? The one at 2 p.m.? That meeting is about you taking control of your own destiny. About you never having to sit across from a man like Gregory Whitmore and beg for scraps. But Marcus, I need to know you're ready. What I'm about to offer you will change your life. It will give you power and resources you've never imagined. But it comes with complications, responsibilities, connections to people and systems that aren't always clean. Marcus's stomach tightened. I'm not trying to become a criminal. And you won't be. But you'll be connected to people who operate in spaces where legality is flexible, where power matters more than law. Can you handle that? Marcus thought about his father, about working himself to death for people who replaced him the day after his funeral. He thought about his grandmother, who'd smiled while cleaning toilets in houses that cost more than she'd make in a lifetime. He thought about sitting in Gregory's office yesterday, being told he didn't have the right background. He thought about all the rules he'd followed, all the hoops he'd jumped through, all the times he'd made himself smaller and more palatable and less threatening just to get a chance at the table. And he thought about how, with one phone call, Raymond had changed everything. I can handle it, Marcus said. Good. 2 p.m. Imperial Hotel, Presidential Suite. Come alone. And Marcus? After today, everything changes. You ready for that? I'm ready. Marcus hung up and stood in the bank parking lot, watching through the windows as chaos continued to unfold inside First Regional Bank. He saw Gregory hurrying toward the back conference rooms, saw executives in expensive suits arriving with briefcases and grim expressions. His phone buzzed with a news alert. First Regional Bank announces emergency board meeting amid allegations of discriminatory lending practices. Marcus stared at the notification, realization dawning. Raymond hadn't just made phone calls, he'd unleashed something. An investigation? Media scrutiny? Whatever it was bigger than just Marcus's loan application. And somehow, Marcus was at the center of it. He got in his car and drove away from First Regional Bank, not knowing that it would be the last time he'd visit it as an outsider, not knowing that by tomorrow everything Gregory Whitmore had taken for granted would be turned upside down, not knowing that the man who dismissed him yesterday would soon be calling him chairman. But what happened next shocked the entire neighborhood. The Imperial Hotel sat in the heart of downtown, 50 stories of glass and steel that screamed money in every architectural detail. Marcus had driven past it 1,000 times but never been inside. This was where Fortune 500 CEOs stayed, where business deals worth millions were negotiated over bourbon in leather-clad lounges, where people like him simply didn't belong. Until today. The doorman opened Marcus's car door without judgment, and a valet appeared immediately to take his keys. Inside, the lobby was all marble and gold accents, with a chandelier that probably cost more than his entire apartment building. Marcus approached the front desk, suddenly aware of how out of place he felt despite his suit. "I'm here for a meeting in the presidential suite," he said to the immaculately dressed woman behind the counter. She smiled without warmth. "Name?" "Marcus Bennett." Her fingers flew across her keyboard, and then her expression changed subtly. "Of course, Mr. Bennett. You're expected. The private elevator is to your right. It will take you directly to the suite." The private elevator. Of course there was a private elevator. Marcus rode up 50 floors in silence, his reflection staring back at him from polished brass. Who was he becoming? 24 hours ago, he was a struggling entrepreneur with a dream and a rejection letter. Now he was riding a private elevator to meet with his uncle and God knows who else, about to step into a world he didn't understand. The doors opened directly into a suite that was bigger than Marcus's entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city. Modern art hung on the walls, pieces Marcus recognized from his limited knowledge as works worth hundreds of thousands of dollars each. And in the center of the main room, around a conference table made of dark wood that gleamed like liquid, sat 5 people. Raymond stood when Marcus entered. He looked different from Marcus's teenage memories. Older, yes, but also harder, more refined. He wore a suit that probably cost $5,000, and he wore it with the ease of someone who bought suits like other people bought groceries. His hair was gray at the temples, his face weathered but confident. "Marcus," Raymond said, coming around the table with open arms. "Come in, nephew. We've been waiting." They embraced, and Marcus felt the solid weight of his uncle's presence, power and danger wrapped in designer fabric. "Let me introduce you," Raymond said, guiding Marcus to the table. "This is Gloria Martinez, managing partner at Summit Capital Ventures." A Latina woman in her 50s, with sharp eyes and an even sharper suit, nodded at Marcus. "Your platform is impressive, Mr. Bennett. We've been tracking your beta results." This is David Chen, CEO of Chen Enterprises and majority shareholder in several regional banking institutions. An Asian man, perhaps 60, with silver hair and hands folded calmly on the table, smiled slightly. "Your uncle speaks highly of you. And this is Patricia Johnson, former SEC investigator and current consultant on financial oversight and compliance. A black woman with natural gray locks and red-framed glasses that somehow made her look both scholarly and formidable, studied Marcus with interest. "I've spent the last 12 hours looking into First Regional Bank's lending practices. What happened to you wasn't an isolated incident." The fifth person at the table was a white man, younger than the others, maybe early 40s, with nervous energy that set him apart from the calm confidence of everyone else. He didn't stand or offer a hand. "And this," Raymond said, with something that might have been satisfaction in his voice, "is Thomas Whitmore, Gregory Whitmore's younger brother and minority shareholder in First Regional Bank." Marcus's head snapped toward the man. The resemblance was there. Same pale eyes, same thin nose. But where Gregory had carried himself with arrogant authority, Thomas looked diminished, anxious. "Mr. Bennett," Thomas said quietly, "I want to apologize for my brother's behavior. It was unprofessional and unacceptable." "Sit down, Marcus." Raymond gestured to an empty chair. "Let me explain what you've walked into." Marcus sat, his mind reeling, trying to understand the constellation of power arranged around this table. Raymond remained standing, moving to the windows, framing himself against the city skyline. "For 15 years, I've been building something, not a business in the traditional sense, but a network, relationships with people who have power, influence, and capital. People who, like me, got tired of watching men like Gregory Whitmore gatekeep opportunities based on their own prejudices and limited vision." "I don't understand," Marcus said. "What does this have to do with me?" "Everything," Gloria spoke up. "Your platform isn't just a good idea, Marcus. It's revolutionary. A genuine solution to a $30 billion problem in the market. But more than that, it's a symbol. Proof that the people being denied access to capital aren't lacking in quality or capability. They're lacking in gatekeepers who recognize that quality." David Chen leaned forward. "First Regional Bank is a mid-sized institution with 15 branches and approximately $2 billion in assets." David Chen leaned forward. "First Regional Bank is a mid-sized institution with 15 branches and approximately $2 billion in assets. It's also been bleeding customers and relevance for the past 5 years. Poor digital strategy, outdated lending practices, and leadership that doesn't understand the changing demographics of their market. They're vulnerable." "Vulnerable to what?" Marcus asked. Patricia Johnson pulled out a tablet, sliding it across the table to Marcus. "To a hostile acquisition. I've been documenting their lending patterns for the past 6 months, thanks to some data your uncle's network obtained through perfectly legal channels. First Regional Bank has rejected 73% of loan applications from black entrepreneurs over the past 3 years, compared to 31% rejection rate for white applicants with comparable credit profiles and collateral." Marcus stared at the numbers. "That's systemic discrimination," Patricia finished. "Actionable. Career-ending for everyone involved. Board-destroying. The kind of liability that tanks stock prices and invites federal investigations." "We leaked the preliminary findings to the financial press this morning," Raymond said. "By Monday, First Regional will be drowning in scrutiny. Their stock price will drop. Shareholders will panic. And when they do—" Thomas Whitmore spoke up, his voice tight with something between shame and calculation. "That's when we make our move. I own 17% of First Regional, not enough to control anything on my own. But combined with Mr. Chen's holdings through his various investment vehicles and the shares that Ms. Martinez's fund has been quietly accumulating over the past 6 months, we have enough to force a vote." Marcus looked at Raymond. "A vote for what?" "To remove the current board and executive leadership," Raymond said. "To install new management. To fundamentally restructure how First Regional operates. and to make you, Marcus, the face of that restructuring." The room spun slightly. "Me?" "You," Gloria confirmed. "We're not just buying a bank, Marcus. We're making a statement. The man who was denied a loan on Monday becomes the chairman of the bank on Wednesday. The entrepreneur who was told he didn't have the right background becomes the person who decides what the right background is. It's not just poetic justice. It's smart business. Your platform needs capital and banking infrastructure to scale. First Regional needs relevance and a new vision. It's symbiotic." "Wait, wait, wait," Marcus held up his hands. "You want me to be chairman of First Regional Bank? I'm 32 years old. I'm a developer. I don't know anything about running a bank." "You'll have advisors," David Chen said calmly. "An experienced team. I'll personally consult on operations. Patricia will handle compliance and regulatory issues. Gloria's fund will provide strategic guidance. You won't be alone in this." "But why me? Why not one of you? You have the experience, the credentials." "Because it has to be you," Raymond cut in, his voice firm. "Because the story matters. Because representation matters. Because when a black entrepreneur gets denied by a system and then buys that system and changes it from the inside, that sends a message that echoes far beyond one bank. It tells every Gregory Whitmore in every institution that their gatekeeping days are numbered. It tells every kid like you, growing up in neighborhoods like we came from, that the doors they keep locked can be kicked down entirely." Marcus stood, walking to the windows, looking out at the city. Somewhere down there, Gregory Whitmore was sitting in an emergency board meeting, probably being grilled about lending practices and liability and discrimination. Somewhere down there, Marcus's sister was working her nursing shift. His mother was preparing Sunday's church service. His community was grinding through another day of being shut out and shut down by systems that didn't value them. "What about Gregory?" Marcus asked quietly. "What happens to him?" "He's fired," Thomas said bluntly, "effective immediately. The board is finalizing his termination as we speak. They'll frame it as part of a larger restructuring, but everyone will know why. He'll get his severance package, his references will be carefully worded, and he'll land somewhere else. Men like my brother always do. But his reputation will be damaged. His authority will be questioned. He'll spend the rest of his career wondering who's scrutinizing his decisions." Marcus thought about the satisfaction he should feel, the revenge served cold on a silver platter, but instead, he felt something more complex. Gregory wasn't the disease. He was a symptom. Removing him didn't cure anything if the system that created him remained unchanged. "I want conditions," Marcus said, turning back to the table. Raymond smiled slightly. "I expected you would. Name them." "First Regional Bank under my leadership implements a community investment fund. $10 million dedicated specifically to loans for minority-owned businesses, with evaluation criteria that prioritize business potential over traditional collateral requirements. Patricia designs the compliance framework to make it bulletproof." Patricia nodded. "Done." "Second, we establish a partnership program with my platform. First Regional becomes the first major financial institution to integrate with it, giving our member businesses direct access to capital and resources. This isn't charity, it's strategy. We grow together." Gloria was already making notes. "That's actually brilliant. It differentiates First Regional in the market and gives your platform institutional credibility. Win-win." "Third," Marcus continued, feeling momentum building, "we institute mandatory bias training for all lending officers and management. Not the corporate lip service kind, real training with real accountability. Lending decisions get audited quarterly for demographic patterns. Any officer showing discriminatory trends gets remedial training or termination." David Chen raised an eyebrow. "That's aggressive." "That's necessary," Marcus countered. If we're doing this, we're doing it right. We're not just swapping faces at the top while the same rot continues underneath. We're changing the culture. Fourth, we recruit aggressively from HBCUs and community organizations for management positions. We build a leadership team that reflects the community we claim to serve. The board will push back on some of this, Thomas warned. They'll say it's too political, too risky. Then we replace the board, Raymond said simply. Thomas, you said yourself we have the votes. If the current board doesn't understand that these changes aren't just moral imperatives but business necessities, then they're part of the problem. Marcus looked at his uncle. What's your angle in all this? What do you get? Raymond's smile was enigmatic. I get to watch my nephew build an empire. I get to see the family legacy redeemed. I get to know that when I'm gone, there's someone who understands how power really works and uses it for more than just personal gain, and he paused, his smile fading into something more vulnerable. I get to make up for 15 years of being the black sheep nobody talks about. I get to show your mother that I didn't abandon the family, I just took a longer road to helping them. The raw honesty in Raymond's voice cracked something open in Marcus's chest. He thought about his mother's silence whenever Raymond's name came up, about the shame and confusion Marcus had felt growing up, wondering where his uncle went and why he left. Mom doesn't know about any of this, does she? Not yet. That's your decision to make. Tell her what you want. I'm used to being the villain in family stories. But Marcus, I need you to understand something. The money I've made, the connections I've built, they didn't all come from places you'd be proud of. I've made compromises. I've worked with people your mother would call sinners. I've operated in spaces where morality is negotiable. Are you saying you're a criminal? I'm saying I'm pragmatic. I'm saying that while other people were debating ethics in boardrooms, I was building relationships in back rooms. Legal? Mostly. Always clean? No. But effective? Always. And now I'm offering to use all of that, the money, the connections, the leverage, to give you something real, something that can change lives. What you do with it, that's on you. Marcus looked around the table, at Gloria, who'd made her fortune backing underdogs in Silicon Valley, at David, who'd immigrated from Taiwan with nothing and now controlled assets worth billions, at Patricia, who'd spent decades investigating financial crimes and now consulted for people who probably operated adjacent to those crimes, at Thomas, who was betraying his own brother to right a systemic wrong. None of them were heroes. All of them operated in moral gray areas, but they were offering Marcus something no one else had, real power. Not the illusion of inclusion, not a seat at a table he'd have to be grateful for, but actual ownership, actual authority, actual ability to change the rules. When does this happen? Marcus asked. The acquisition proposal goes to First Regional's board Monday morning, Gloria said. We're offering 20% above current market value per share. Given the discrimination scandal breaking, the shareholders will pressure the board to accept. We'll have control by end of week. And the announcement of new leadership? Next Friday, Raymond said. We'll hold a press conference, introduce you as the new chairman, tell your story, MIT graduate, experienced tech professional, entrepreneur who was denied a loan and decided to buy the bank instead. The media will eat it up. It'll go viral. And every entrepreneur who's ever been dismissed by a Gregory Whitmore will see themselves in you. And Gregory? He'll be there? Patricia shook her head. He'll be gone by Monday. Severance package signed. Non-disclosure agreement in place. He'll disappear quietly. No, Marcus said suddenly. I want him there. Everyone looked at him. I want Gregory Whitmore at the press conference. I want him to stand there while I'm introduced as chairman. I want him to see exactly what happens when you underestimate someone. I want him to understand that the man he dismissed on Monday is his boss on Friday. Raymond's smile was slow and dangerous. "That's cold, nephew." "That's justice," Marcus corrected. "He made me feel small, made me question everything I'd built and worked for, made me feel like no matter what I achieved, I'd never be good enough for men like him. I want him to feel that. I want him to understand that his judgment was worthless." Thomas shifted uncomfortably. "My brother won't agree to that. He'll refuse to attend." "Then make it a condition of his severance package," Marcus said. "He attends the press conference, maintains professional decorum, and gets his full compensation. He refuses, and we make the discrimination findings very public and very personal." "His choice." David Chen laughed, a short bark of surprise. "Raymond, your nephew is more ruthless than you described." "He's a Bennett," Raymond said with unmistakable pride. "We don't forget who tried to bury us." Gloria stood, extending her hand to Marcus. "Welcome to the game, Mr. Chairman. This is going to be one hell of a ride." Marcus shook her hand, then everyone else's around the table. When he got to Thomas, the man's grip was weak, and he wouldn't quite meet Marcus's eyes. "I'm sorry," Thomas said quietly, "for what my brother did, for what the bank has been doing. I should have spoken up sooner." "You're speaking up now," Marcus said. "That's what matters. But Thomas, I need to know, are you doing this because it's right or because you see an opportunity?" Thomas finally met his gaze. "Both. I won't lie to you. I'm tired of being the younger brother, the minority shareholder without influence. This gives me power I've never had. But I'm also tired of being part of something rotten. My brother, he's not a monster. He's just a product of a system that rewarded him for being exactly who he is. Maybe taking that system away from him forces him to become someone different." Marcus nodded. It was honest at least. Messy and complicated and driven by mixed motives, but honest. The meeting continued for another 2 hours. They discussed logistics, timelines, legal strategies, media management. Marcus signed documents he barely understood, trusting that the lawyers Raymond had assembled knew what they were doing. He authorized Gloria to speak on his behalf to First Regional's board. He agreed to media training sessions starting Monday morning. By the time they finished, the sun was setting over the city, painting the skyline in gold and crimson. Marcus stood at the windows one more time, looking down at a world that was about to tilt on its axis. "Second thoughts?" Raymond asked, coming to stand beside him. "1,000 thoughts," Marcus admitted, "but no second ones. This is happening, isn't it?" "It's already happened. We've been planning this for months. Your rejection was just the catalyst we needed, the human story that makes it all meaningful. So, you were always going to do this? Take over the bank? We were always going to do something. That bank was on our radar because of its lending patterns and its vulnerability. But you gave us the perfect narrative, the perfect face, the perfect reason to act now instead of next quarter." Marcus looked at his uncle. "Are you using me?" "Yes," Raymond said without hesitation. "I'm using you. And you're using me. We're using each other. That's how power works, Marcus. It's not clean. It's not simple. It's a series of mutually beneficial arrangements between people who need what others have. I needed a compelling figurehead and a next-generation vision. You needed capital and infrastructure and revenge. We're both getting what we want. And what if I fail? What if I can't actually run a bank? Then we adjust. You have advisors. You have support. You have people whose success is tied to yours. But Marcus, let me tell you something my father told me when I was your age. He said, the difference between powerful men and everyone else isn't intelligence or ethics or even luck. It's audacity. The willingness to reach for something you're not qualified for and fake it until you figure it out. You're audacious enough. The rest you'll learn. Marcus's phone buzzed. A text from his sister. Mom's asking about the loan. What should I tell her? Reality crashed back in. His family. His mother who cleaned church pews every Saturday and prayed for him every night. His sister who worked double shifts to pay off nursing school debt. His community that struggled and scraped and survived in a city that got more expensive every year. What would they think of all this? Of him making deals with people like Raymond, taking revenge on Gregory, becoming chairman of a bank through what amounted to a hostile takeover orchestrated by his uncle's morally ambiguous network? "You're thinking about your mother," Raymond observed. "How did you know?" "Because you get the same look on your face that I used to get, that mix of ambition and guilt, wanting power and being afraid of what it costs. What did it cost you? All of this? 15 years away from family?" Raymond was quiet for a long time. "Everything I couldn't afford, and nothing I regret. I became someone your mother couldn't recognize, someone your father hated, someone the family whispered about. But I also became someone who could make phone calls that change lives, someone who could give his nephew an empire. Was it worth it? Ask me in 5 years when you're running that bank and funding businesses that change neighborhoods. Or ask you in 5 years when I've become just like Gregory, when I've let power corrupt me into the very thing I'm trying to fight." Raymond gripped Marcus's shoulder. "Then don't become him. You have the power now. Use it differently. That's the whole point. That's why it has to be you and not David or Gloria or me. We're all too compromised. But you remember yesterday. You remember how it felt to be dismissed. Keep remembering that. Let it fuel you, not corrupt you." Marcus nodded slowly. He pulled out his phone and called his sister. "Hey," Janine answered. "So what's the verdict? Did they approve it?" "It's complicated," Marcus said. "Can you and Mom come to dinner tomorrow? I need to explain some things." "Marcus, you're scaring me. What happened?" "Something good, I think. Something big. I'll explain tomorrow. Just trust me. And tell Mom I love her." He hung up before his sister could ask more questions. Tomorrow, he'd tell them everything. Tomorrow he'd face his mother's judgment and his sister's concern. Tomorrow he'd have to explain how he'd gone from rejected entrepreneur to bank chairman in 72 hours. But tonight, standing in that hotel suite with the city sprawling below him, Marcus let himself feel something he'd been denying since walking out of Gregory's office yesterday. He let himself feel powerful, not the humble power of hard work and merit, not the patient power of following rules and hoping for fairness, but the raw, undeniable power of having leverage and using it. The power of making men who dismissed you suddenly desperate for your approval. The power of rewriting the rules that were written to exclude you. It felt dangerous. It felt intoxicating. It felt like everything his mother had warned him against and everything his father had died wishing he'd had. "I need to go," Marcus said to the room. "I need to think." "Monday morning," Gloria reminded him. 9 a.m., media training. Be ready." Marcus nodded and headed for the private elevator. As the doors closed, he caught one last glimpse of Raymond standing at those windows, silhouetted against the dying light, looking like a king surveying his kingdom, or, like the devil, waiting to see if his nephew's soul was worth the price of an empire. The week that followed was a blur of lawyers and meetings and strategy sessions. Marcus barely slept. He spent Monday and Tuesday in media training, learning how to speak in sound bites, how to control his facial expressions, how to deflect hostile questions with grace. He spent Wednesday and Thursday in crash courses on banking regulations, financial oversight, and institutional management. By Friday morning, press conference day, Marcus had transformed. His hair was cut sharp, his suit custom-tailored, his posture carrying an authority that hadn't existed a week ago. He looked at himself in the mirror of the hotel suite. Raymond had insisted he stay there all week, away from distractions. and barely recognized the man staring back. "You ready?" Raymond asked, adjusting Marcus's tie with the precision of a man who understood that details mattered. "No," Marcus admitted, "but I'm doing it anyway." The press conference was scheduled for 10 a.m. at First Regional Bank's main branch, the same building where Marcus had been humiliated 6 days ago. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The main conference room had been transformed into a media space, cameras positioned to capture the moment, reporters from financial outlets and local news stations crowding the rows of seats. And standing against the back wall, looking like he wanted to dissolve into the floor, was Gregory Whitmore. Marcus's eyes found him immediately. Gregory looked diminished. His suit was slightly rumpled, his face pale, his eyes refusing to meet anyone's gaze directly. Thomas had made good on the arrangement. Gregory was here, bound by his severance agreement to witness his own replacement. Patricia Johnson approached Marcus. "The discrimination findings are going public after the press conference. We're framing it as part of a larger institutional failing, not just Gregory specifically, but everyone knows he was the face of it. Legal says we're covered." "And the board?" "The old board resigned this morning. David's appointees are in place. You have full authority as chairman, effective immediately. Congratulations, Mr. Bennett. You officially own this place." Gloria appeared at his other side. 3 minutes. We're going to keep this tight. I'll introduce the acquisition and restructuring. David will speak about institutional vision. Then you'll take the podium. Remember, confident but not arrogant. Determined but not angry. You're not here for revenge. You're here to build something better. "Even though I'm absolutely here for revenge," Marcus muttered. Gloria smiled. "That's between you and your therapist. For the cameras, you're a visionary entrepreneur who saw an opportunity to align his platform with institutional infrastructure." The 3 minutes passed like 3 seconds. Suddenly, Marcus was being guided to the front of the room, the flash of cameras bright enough to make him squint, the murmur of reporters' voices creating a wall of sound that felt suffocating. Gloria stepped to the podium first, commanding immediate attention. "Good morning. Thank you all for coming. Today marks a significant moment in the history of First Regional Bank. After extensive negotiations, a coalition of investors including Summit Capital Ventures, Chen Enterprises, and several other institutional partners have completed the acquisition of controlling interest in First Regional Bank. This acquisition represents not just a business transaction, but a fundamental reimagining of how community banking can and should operate." She went on, hitting all the key points: the commitment to community investment, the focus on underserved markets, the integration with emerging technologies. David Chen followed, speaking about institutional stability and long-term growth strategies. Both were professional, polished, and perfectly calibrated to reassure investors while signaling change. Then Gloria said the words that made Marcus's heart rate spike. "And now, I'm pleased to introduce the new chairman of First Regional Bank's board of directors, Mr. Marcus Bennett." The applause was polite but curious. Marcus stood and walked to the podium, aware of every camera, every eye, every judgment being formed in real time. He glanced once at Gregory, who was staring at the floor like it might offer escape. "Thank you, Gloria," Marcus began, his voice steadier than he felt. 6 days ago, I sat in an office in this building and requested a loan. I had a solid business plan, proven technology, and clear market demand. I was denied. Not because my business wasn't viable, but because the person evaluating my application made assumptions about who I was based on how I looked and sounded. He decided I didn't have the right background, the right pedigree, the right kind of credibility." The room had gone completely silent. Marcus could see reporters leaning forward, cameras zooming in. That experience isn't unique. It's the experience of thousands of entrepreneurs, particularly Black and brown entrepreneurs, who walk into financial institutions with dreams and data, only to walk out with rejection based on biases the evaluators don't even recognize in themselves. That's not just morally wrong, it's economically stupid. It's leaving billions of dollars of value untapped because gatekeepers are using broken metrics to measure potential. Marcus paused, letting the words settle. So I decided to stop asking for permission. Instead of begging for a seat at a table that didn't want me, I bought the table. And now, as chairman of First Regional Bank, I'm going to make sure that table has room for everyone whose potential has been dismissed because they didn't fit someone's narrow definition of worthiness. The applause was louder now, more enthusiastic. Marcus saw several reporters nodding, some already typing furiously on their devices. Today, I'm announcing several immediate changes to First Regional Bank's operations, Marcus continued. First, we're establishing a $10 million community investment fund dedicated specifically to supporting minority-owned businesses. This fund will use evaluation criteria that prioritize business potential and market viability over traditional collateral requirements. Second, First Regional is partnering with my platform, Connect Black, to become the first major financial institution to integrate directly with technology that serves underserved business communities. Third, we're implementing comprehensive bias training and quarterly auditing of all lending decisions to ensure that what happened to me doesn't happen to anyone else. More applause. Marcus could feel the energy in the room shifting. This wasn't just a press conference anymore. It was becoming something else, a moment, a statement. I want to be clear about something, Marcus said, his voice dropping slightly, becoming more intimate. I didn't do this alone. I had help from people with resources and connections I didn't have. I had an uncle who made phone calls I couldn't make. I had investors who believed in me when banks wouldn't. That's not a fairy tale about pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. That's reality. Success isn't about individual merit in a vacuum. It's about access, networks, opportunities, and, yes, sometimes it's about power and leverage. He looked directly at Gregory now, and the man finally raised his eyes to meet his. The system that denied me wasn't broken. It was working exactly as designed. It's just designed wrong. Designed to benefit people who already have access and exclude people who don't. My goal as chairman isn't to become a better gatekeeper. It's to tear down the gates entirely, to build something that evaluates potential rather than pedigree, to create access for people who've been shut out. Marcus stepped back from the podium. I'll take questions now. Hands shot up across the room. Gloria managed the selection, calling on reporters strategically. Mr. Bennett, some critics might say you're not qualified to run a financial institution. How do you respond? Marcus smiled slightly. I'd say those critics sound a lot like the people who said I wasn't qualified for a loan. Qualifications aren't just about traditional experience. They're about vision, adaptability, and willingness to challenge broken systems. I have advisors with decades of banking experience. I have my own expertise in technology and market analysis, and I have something maybe more important. I have recent personal experience being on the other side of that desk. I know what it feels like to be evaluated and found wanting for reasons that have nothing to do with actual capability. That perspective is valuable. Another reporter. What happens to the employees who were part of the discriminatory lending practices? Are there going to be mass firings? There's going to be accountability, Marcus said carefully. Anyone who violated lending standards or demonstrated clear discriminatory patterns will face consequences, including potential termination. But we're also recognizing that individual bias often reflects institutional culture. We're changing that culture from the top down. People who are willing to adapt, learn, and embrace new standards will have opportunities to grow with us. People who aren't, won't. Mr. Bennett, is it true that the former branch manager who denied your loan, Gregory Whitmore, is present today? Marcus felt the room's energy shift again, everyone turning to look at Gregory, who seemed to shrink further against the wall. Yes, Marcus said simply. Mr. Whitmore is here today as part of the transition process. His employment with First Regional Bank has been terminated, but he's here to ensure continuity during the leadership change. Do you have anything you'd like to say to him? Marcus paused. This was the moment he'd been waiting for, the moment of pure poetic revenge. He could destroy Gregory right here, publicly humiliate him the way he'd been humiliated, make him feel small and worthless and dismissed. But looking at Gregory now, seeing him already broken and diminished, Marcus realized something. The revenge he'd imagined, the public humiliation, the crushing blow, wasn't satisfying because Gregory was already crushed. The system had abandoned him the moment he became a liability. He'd gone from powerful gatekeeper to unemployed cautionary tale in less than a week. That was punishment enough. I hope Mr. Whitmore learns from this experience, Marcus said finally. I hope he reflects on the assumptions he made and the impact those assumptions had. I hope he becomes better. That's all I have to say about that. The press conference continued for another 30 minutes. Questions about financial strategy, about Connect Black's technology, about Marcus's vision for First Regional's future. Through it all, Marcus felt himself settling into the role. Not comfortably, he was still aware of how surreal this was, but competently. When it finally ended, Marcus was swarmed by reporters wanting individual comments, investors wanting meetings, employees wanting to introduce themselves to their new chairman. Gloria and Patricia ran interference, managing access, scheduling follow-ups, ensuring Marcus didn't get overwhelmed. Through the chaos, Marcus saw Gregory making his way toward the exit. On impulse, Marcus extracted himself from the crowd and followed. "Gregory," he called. The man stopped, turning slowly. Up close, he looked even worse, eyes bloodshot, face drawn, shoulders slumped. "I just wanted to say," Gregory started, then seemed to lose the words. "I'm sorry. For what I said, how I treated you, I was wrong." Marcus studied him for a moment. "Were you wrong, though? Or were you just operating exactly the way the system taught you to operate?" "Both," Gregory admitted. "I was doing what I'd always done, what I'd seen others do, what got rewarded. But that doesn't make it right, and it doesn't excuse it." "No, it doesn't," Marcus agreed. "What are you going to do now?" Gregory laughed bitterly. "I don't know. Find another position somewhere, I suppose. Though, after this," he gestured vaguely at the press conference space, "my reputation is pretty much destroyed." "Maybe that's an opportunity," Marcus said. "Maybe you get to rebuild yourself into someone different, someone who doesn't make the same mistakes." "That's generous of you." "It's not generosity, it's practicality. The world is changing. People like you either change with it or get left behind. I'm giving you a chance to choose which one you want to be." Gregory nodded slowly, then extended his hand. "Good luck, Mr. Chairman. I think you might actually do some good." Marcus shook his hand briefly, then watched him walk away. A man who'd had power and lost it, who'd been comfortable and became uncomfortable, who'd been on top of the system and suddenly found himself beneath it. "That was classy," Raymond said, appearing at Marcus's shoulder. "I thought you'd go harder on him." "What would be the point? He's already done. And honestly, I feel more sorry for him than angry. He really believed he was doing the right thing." "That's almost worse than if he'd been actively malicious." "That's what makes you different from men like him," Raymond observed. "And what makes you dangerous in a good way. You understand that the enemy isn't individual people. It's the systems that shape them. Change the system. You change everything. Marcus looked at his uncle. Is that what you were trying to do all these years? Change the system? No, Raymond admitted. I was trying to survive it, then exploit it. Then eventually, I guess I got tired of exploiting it alone. Wanted to build something that might outlast me. You're that something, Marcus. You and what you build with this opportunity. Marcus's phone buzzed. Multiple texts from his sister. Mom is freaking out. She saw the press conference. What is happening? I need to go, Marcus said. Family dinner. I've been putting it off all week. Good luck with that. Your mother is scarier than any board meeting. Raymond wasn't wrong. 2 hours later, Marcus sat in his mother's living room, the same living room where he'd grown up, where family photos lined the walls, where the furniture was worn but immaculately clean, and faced the formidable force that was Evelyn Bennett. His mother sat in her chair, the one that had been his father's before he died, wearing her church dress because she'd come straight from afternoon service. She hadn't said a word since Marcus arrived, just looked at him with those eyes that had seen through every lie he'd ever attempted as a child. Janine sat on the couch next to Marcus, equally silent, waiting. So, Evelyn finally said, her voice quiet and somehow more terrifying than if she'd been yelling. When were you planning to tell your mother that you'd gotten involved with Raymond, that you'd become chairman of a bank, that you'd made a deal with the devil? Mom, it's not, don't you dare. Mom, it's not me, Marcus Leon Bennett. I saw that press conference. I saw you standing there in that expensive suit, talking about buying tables instead of sitting at them, about power and leverage and tearing down gates. That's Raymond's language, Raymond's philosophy, Raymond's world. Raymond helped me when no one else would, Marcus said, trying to keep his voice level. When that bank denied me, when I had nowhere else to turn, you could have turned to me, Evelyn interrupted, and there was hurt beneath the anger. You could have come to your family. We could have figured something out together. With what money, Mom? With what connections? You work 3 jobs just to keep this house. Janine's drowning in student debt. What were you going to do? Take out a second mortgage? Sell the car? I needed $250,000, not grocery money. So instead, you sold your soul to my brother-in-law, Evelyn said sharply. Do you even know what Raymond does, Marcus? The kind of people he works with? The compromises he's made? I know enough, Marcus said. I know he operates in gray areas. I know his money isn't clean. I know he's made deals with people you wouldn't approve of. But Mom, the clean money, the legitimate paths, they didn't want me. They looked at me and saw risk. Raymond looked at me and saw family. Raymond looks at you and sees a chess piece, Evelyn countered. A way to legitimize himself. A way to feel like he didn't waste 15 years building an empire on shifting sand. Maybe, Marcus admitted. Maybe I am being used, but I'm also using him. I'm getting something I never could have built alone. And, yeah, it's complicated and messy and probably going to cost me in ways I don't even understand yet. But Mom, what was the alternative? Keep following the rules? Keep waiting for permission? Keep believing that if I just worked hard enough and smart enough, the doors would open? The alternative was keeping your integrity, Evelyn said, standing now, her voice rising. The alternative was building something clean, even if it took longer. The alternative was not becoming the very thing we've been fighting against our entire lives, people who win by leveraging power instead of merit. Merit didn't matter, Marcus shouted, surprising himself with the volume. That's what you're not getting, Mom. I had merit. I had education and experience and a perfect business plan, and it didn't matter because the person evaluating me had already decided what I was worth before I opened my mouth. Merit only matters when the people judging you are willing to see it, and they weren't. The room fell silent. Janine looked between them, clearly wanting to intervene but not knowing how. Your father, Evelyn said quietly, sitting back down. died believing that if he just worked hard enough, if he just kept his head down and did everything right, things would work out. And they didn't. He died tired and broken and disappointed. I don't want that for you, Marcus. But I also don't want you to become something he wouldn't recognize. Something I can't recognize. Marcus sat down on the floor in front of his mother, the way he used to when he was a child seeking forgiveness. Mom, I'm still me. I'm still the kid who you raised to believe in justice and fairness and doing right by people. I'm operating in a system that doesn't reward those things the way you taught me they would. So I'm trying to change the system instead of just surviving it. With Raymond's help. With Raymond's help, Marcus confirmed. And yeah, that scares me too. Every day this week, I've woken up wondering if I'm making a mistake. If I'm going to look back in 5 years and not recognize the person I've become. But I also wake up knowing that I have a chance to do something real with Raymond's help, Marcus confirmed. And yeah, that scares me too. Every day this week, I've woken up wondering if I'm making a mistake, if I'm going to look back in 5 years and not recognize the person I've become. But I also wake up knowing that I have a chance to do something real, to actually help people instead of just talking about it, to fund businesses that banks like First Regional have been denying for decades, to give other people the opportunities I almost didn't get. Evelyn reached down and touched her son's face, her hand weathered from years of work, but gentle. You look so much like your father right now. Same determination in your eyes. Same belief that you can fix what's broken. She paused, her eyes glistening. But your father's determination got him nowhere because he wouldn't bend. And I'm afraid Raymond's influence will make you bend so far you break. Then help me stay balanced, Marcus said, taking her hand. Be the voice in my head that reminds me why I'm doing this. Keep me accountable. If you see me becoming someone you can't recognize, tell me. I'll listen. Will you? Evelyn asked. Will you really listen when you're in boardrooms making million-dollar decisions? Will you remember this conversation when someone offers you a compromise that makes you rich but makes you less? I don't know, Marcus admitted, and the honesty felt like relief. I really don't know, Mom. I'm 32 years old, and I'm running a bank. I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm terrified I'm going to fail. Terrified I'm going to succeed and hate who I become in the process. But I know I couldn't live with myself if I didn't try. Janine finally spoke up. For what it's worth, I think what you're doing is brave. Scary as hell, but brave. And the Community Investment Fund? That's going to change lives, Marcus. Real lives. People who've been shut out are going to get chances because of you. People who've been shut out are going to get chances because of Raymond's money, Evelyn corrected. Let's not pretend this is some rags to riches fairy tale. This is a complicated, messy situation where my son is in bed with people I spent 30 years warning him to stay away from. You warned me to stay away from Raymond because he embarrassed the family, Marcus said quietly. Because he left and made money doing things you didn't approve of and never came back to explain himself. But you never told me what he actually did, what he was actually involved in. You just said he was lost and made bad choices, and we weren't supposed to talk about him. Evelyn was quiet for a long moment. I didn't tell you because I didn't know. Raymond left when you were 17. He cut ties with everyone except your father, and even those conversations happened in whispers I wasn't supposed to hear. All I know is that he went to New York, got involved with investors and hedge funds and people with more money than morals, and when your father tried to bring him back into the family business, Raymond said he'd move beyond small-time thinking. That's a direct quote. Your father never forgave him for that. What was the family business? Marcus asked. Dad drove a taxi. Before that, he worked in a factory. What business was there to come back to? Evelyn smiled sadly. Your grandfather, my father-in-law, owned a small shipping company. Nothing fancy, just local freight. But it employed 15 people and kept the family comfortable. When he died, he left it to your father and Raymond to run together. Your father wanted to keep it small, steady, reliable. Raymond wanted to expand, take risks, modernize. They fought about it for 2 years. Then Raymond sold his half to your father without warning and disappeared with the money. Marcus felt something shift in his understanding. So Raymond didn't just leave the family. He sold out his share of the family business and used that money to build whatever empire he built, Evelyn finished, to make connections and investments and God knows what else. Your father spent the next 20 years working twice as hard to keep that company running after Raymond's departure left it understaffed and underfunded. Eventually, he had to sell it anyway when the larger shipping companies pushed him out of the market. That's when he started driving the taxi. All those years of work and Raymond's abandonment basically destroyed what your grandfather built. The weight of this history settled over the room. Marcus understood now why his mother's anger ran so deep. Raymond hadn't just left. He'd dismantled the family legacy to fund his own ambitions. But he succeeded, Marcus said slowly. Raymond took his share and turned it into real wealth, real power. Meanwhile, Dad kept trying to do things the right way and lost everything anyway. Your father kept his integrity, Evelyn said firmly. He kept his family. He kept his community. He died with less money, but more respect. He died at 62 of a heart attack because stress and overwork destroyed his health, Marcus countered, and immediately regretted the harshness in his voice. I'm sorry, I didn't mean— No, you're right, Evelyn said, her voice breaking slightly. Your father worked himself to death, and for what? We lost the house anyway after he died. I had to rent this place, had to work 3 jobs to keep Janine in school. Your father's integrity and respect didn't pay the mortgage or the medical bills. So maybe Raymond wasn't entirely wrong. Maybe trying to do everything the right way in a wrong system is its own kind of foolishness. The admission seemed to cost her something. Marcus saw tears sliding down his mother's cheeks. And he moved to sit beside her on the chair arm, putting his arm around her shoulders. I'm not trying to disrespect Dad's memory, Marcus said softly. I loved him. I respected him. He taught me everything about being a good man. But he also taught me, maybe without meaning to, that being good isn't enough, that working hard isn't enough, that following the rules of a rigged game just means you lose slowly instead of quickly. So what are you going to do? Evelyn asked, wiping her eyes. Become Raymond? Abandon your family for 15 years and then show up with blood money? No, Marcus said firmly. I'm going to be myself. I'm going to use Raymond's network and resources to build something that actually helps people. I'm going to take this bank and turn it into what it should have been all along, a place that serves the community instead of exploiting it. And I'm going to bring you with me. Evelyn looked at him sharply. What do you mean? I mean you're retiring from those 3 jobs. I mean Janine's student loans are getting paid off. I mean this family is never going to struggle like we've struggled again. I have power now, Mom. Real financial power. And I'm going to use it to take care of the people I love first, and then extend that same care outward to everyone else who's been ground down by this system. Marcus, I don't want your charity. It's not charity, Marcus interrupted. It's what families do. It's what we should have been able to do for each other all along if the system hadn't kept us barely surviving. Dad would have helped Raymond if Raymond had needed it. Raymond's helping me now. I'm going to help you. That's how this is supposed to work. Janine was crying now too. My student loans? Marcus, that's $80,000. I know. I looked it up this morning. Consider it handled. I can't let you can't stop me, Marcus said with a slight smile. One of the perks of being chairman. I can actually afford to help my family now, so let me. Evelyn was quiet for a long time, her hand gripping Marcus's. Finally, she said, "Your father would be proud and horrified in equal measure." "Sounds about right," Marcus agreed. "But Mom, I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Can you trust that I'm not going to lose myself in this? That I'm going to stay who you raised me to be, even while operating in Raymond's world?" "I don't know," Evelyn admitted, "but I'll try. And Marcus, I'll be watching. Every decision you make, every compromise you consider, I'll be watching. And if I see you becoming someone I don't recognize, someone your father wouldn't recognize, I will call you on it, chairman or not." "I'm counting on it," Marcus said. They sat together for a while longer, the three of them, processing the seismic shifts that had occurred in just 1 week. Eventually, Janine ordered pizza, Marcus's treat naturally, and they ate dinner together like they used to before life got so complicated. They didn't talk about banks or loans or Raymond or any of it. They just talked about normal things, about Janine's patients at the hospital, about the new pastor at their mother's church, about the neighbor's dog that kept getting loose and terrorizing the mail carrier. Normal things, human things, the kind of things that reminded Marcus why any of this mattered. When Marcus finally left around 10 p.m., his mother walked him to the door. "One more thing," Evelyn said as he was leaving. "Raymond called me this afternoon. First time I've heard his voice in 15 years. Marcus stopped. "What did he say?" "He said, 'I'm sorry.' Just that. 'I'm sorry for leaving. I'm sorry for how I left. I'm sorry it took this long to reach out. But I'm not sorry for what I built, because now I get to give it to Marcus. And maybe that makes all of it worth something.'" "What did you say?" "I hung up on him," Evelyn admitted. "But then I called him back an hour later. We talked for 20 minutes. It was difficult, painful, but necessary. I'm not ready to forgive him. I might never be. But I'm willing to acknowledge that maybe his way and your father's way weren't as incompatible as I thought. Maybe we need people who play by the rules and people who break them. Maybe we need both to actually change anything." Marcus kissed his mother's forehead. "I love you, Mom. And I promise I'll make you proud. Or at least I'll try not to make you too ashamed." "Oh, baby," Evelyn said with a sad laugh. "I'm already proud. I'm also terrified and angry and confused. But I'm proud. Your father would be too, even if he'd never admit it." Marcus drove home that night feeling lighter than he had all week. His mother's conditional acceptance wasn't everything, but it was enough. It was permission to move forward without feeling like he was betraying the people who'd raised him. His phone rang as he pulled into his apartment complex. "Raymond." "How'd it go with your mother?" his uncle asked. "About as well as could be expected. She's not happy, but she's not disowning me. Progress. She called me today. First time we've talked in 15 years. She told me." "What made you decide to reach out?" "You," Raymond said simply. "You're going to be a bridge between me and the family, between the world I built and the values your parents raised you with. I figured it was time to stop being a ghost and start being an uncle again, even if your mother hates me for another 15 years. "She doesn't hate you," Marcus said. "She's hurt. There's a difference." "Maybe. Listen, Monday morning you officially start as chairman. Your office is ready, your assistant is hired, your schedule is booked solid for the next 2 months. You ready for this?" "No," Marcus admitted. "But when has that ever stopped me?" Raymond laughed. "That's my nephew. Get some sleep. Tomorrow your life changes again." "I thought it already changed. That was just the appetizer. Monday is when the real work begins." Monday morning, Marcus walked into First Regional Bank not as a supplicant or a visitor, but as chairman. The transformation of how people treated him was immediate and almost comical. The same security guard who'd tracked him suspiciously now held the door open with a smile. The same tellers who'd barely acknowledged him now called out good morning. The same executives who'd ignored him in the waiting area now scrambled to introduce themselves. His office was on the top floor, the executive floor that he'd never even known existed. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the financial district, a desk made of wood that probably cost more than his car, an assistant named Diane who was efficient and intimidating in equal measure. "Your 9 o'clock is here," Diane said before he'd even sat down. "Senior management team. They want to introduce themselves." And so it began. 12 hours of back-to-back meetings, department heads explaining operations, lawyers explaining regulations, accountants explaining financial positions, HR explaining personnel issues. Each meeting was a crash course in an aspect of banking Marcus barely understood, delivered by people who were trying to gauge whether their new chairman was an idiot or a genius. By 6 p.m., Marcus's brain felt like it had been through a blender. He was sitting at his desk, staring at a financial report that might as well have been written in ancient Greek, when his door opened without a knock. Patricia Johnson walked in, carrying 2 cups of coffee, and sat down across from him without invitation. "You look like you're drowning," she observed. "I am drowning," Marcus admitted. "I have no idea what I'm doing. Everyone keeps talking about capital adequacy ratios and loan-to-deposit percentages and stress testing protocols, and I'm just nodding like I understand when I barely understand half the words they're using." Patricia smiled slightly. "Good. That means you're honest. Half the people running banks don't understand what they're doing either. They just hide it better. The fact that you're willing to admit it means you'll learn." "How long until I actually know what I'm doing?" 2 years, maybe 3, if you're a fast learner. But Marcus, here's what you need to understand. You're not here because you're a banking expert. You're here because you understand something these people don't. You understand what it's like to be on the other side of the table. Every decision you make, you can ask yourself, would this have helped me when I was sitting in Gregory Whitmore's office? If the answer is no, don't do it. That seems overly simplistic. Most good principles are. The complexity comes in execution, not in philosophy. Now, there's something we need to discuss. I've been reviewing First Regional's lending portfolio from the past 5 years, and it's worse than we thought. Marcus sat up straighter. "Worse how?" Patricia pulled out her tablet, showing him graphs and charts. The discrimination wasn't just in approval rates. It was in interest rates, loan terms, collateral requirements. Every aspect of the lending process was skewed against minority applicants. We're talking about systematic, provable, pattern-based discrimination across every branch and every loan officer. Jesus! Can we be sued for this? We can and probably will be, which is why we need to get ahead of it. I'm recommending we establish a remediation fund. Everyone who was denied a loan or given unfavorable terms over the past 5 years gets contacted and offered a chance to reapply under new criteria. If they qualify under the new standards, we approve them retroactively and compensate them for the time they lost. Marcus stared at her. How much would that cost? Conservatively, $30 million. Maybe more. We just announced a $10 million community investment fund. You're saying we need to triple that? I'm saying we need to make people whole. The alternative is waiting for class action lawsuits that will cost us that much anyway, plus legal fees, plus reputation damage. This way, we control the narrative. We own the mistake and fix it proactively. Marcus leaned back in his chair. $30 million. It was more money than he could really comprehend, being tossed around like it was a normal Tuesday budget item. "Do it," he said finally. "Set up the fund. Contact everyone. Make it right." Patricia smiled, a real smile this time, not just professional courtesy. "That's why Raymond chose you. You make the right call even when it's expensive." "I make the call that lets me sleep at night," Marcus corrected. which sometimes happens to be the right call. Over the next month, Marcus settled into his role, or at least he learned to fake confidence well enough that people stopped questioning whether he belonged. The remediation fund became reality, and the media coverage was overwhelmingly positive. New First Regional Chairman makes amends for past discrimination, read the headlines. Marcus did interview after interview, becoming the face of a new kind of banking. The Community Investment Fund started approving its first loans. Marcus insisted on reviewing every application personally, at least in the beginning. He wanted to know who they were helping, wanted to see the business plans and hear the stories. Each approval felt like a small act of redemption for his own rejection. Connect Black's integration with First Regional launched to significant fanfare. Suddenly, Marcus's platform wasn't just a good idea. It was backed by institutional infrastructure and capital. User growth exploded. Businesses that had been struggling to find resources suddenly had direct access to funding, mentorship, and markets. Everything was working, everything was growing, everything was successful, and Marcus was miserable. Not all the time. There were moments of genuine satisfaction, watching a business owner get approved for a loan and seeing their face light up with possibility. Receiving thank you letters from people whose lives had been changed by the remediation fund. Seeing Connect Black's user metrics climb week after week. But those moments were surrounded by endless meetings, political maneuvering, and the constant feeling that he was performing a role rather than being himself. He was Marcus Bennett, chairman now, not just Marcus. Every word was calculated. Every appearance was strategic. Every decision was filtered through 5 different advisors before being implemented. He rarely saw his family, hadn't coded anything in weeks, barely slept, and when he did sleep, he dreamed about sitting in Gregory Whitmore's office. Except in the dreams, he was Gregory, and someone else was sitting across from him, and he was saying all the same dismissive things Gregory had said. It was Raymond who finally called him on it. 2 months into Marcus's chairmanship, they met for dinner at an expensive restaurant that Marcus would have been intimidated to enter 3 months ago. Now he walked in like he belonged, because technically, he did. "You look like hell," Raymond observed over appetizers that cost $40. "Thanks. You always know how to make a guy feel good?" "I'm serious. You've lost weight. You're not sleeping. Diane says you're in the office until 9 or 10 every night. This isn't sustainable." "It's fine. I'm handling it." "You're drowning and pretending it's swimming. There's a difference." Raymond leaned forward. "Talk to me. What's actually going on?" Marcus was quiet for a moment, pushing expensive food around his expensive plate. "I thought this would feel different. I thought having power would feel liberating. Instead, it feels like I traded one cage for another. Before, I was trapped by lack of resources and access. Now I'm trapped by expectations and responsibilities. Everyone wants something from me. Everyone has an opinion about what I should do. I can't make a single decision without 12 people weighing in." "Welcome to leadership," Raymond said dryly. "It sucks. That's why most people avoid it." "Then why did you push me into it?" "Because someone had to. Because the alternative was letting men like Gregory keep making decisions for people like us." "But Marcus, I never said it would be easy or fun. I said it would be important. There's a difference." "Maybe I'm not built for this," Marcus admitted. "Maybe I should just stick to what I know: coding, building products, solving technical problems. Maybe I should step down and let someone else run the bank." "You want to quit?" Raymond asked, his voice neutral but his eyes sharp. "I want to stop feeling like I'm suffocating." "So, delegate. You don't have to be in every meeting. You don't have to personally approve every decision. That's what you have a management team for. Your job as chairman isn't to do everything. It's to set direction and make sure everyone else is doing their jobs. You're micromanaging yourself into exhaustion. If I'm not in the meetings, how do I know what's happening? How do I make sure we're actually helping people and not just doing performative change while the same old practices continue underneath? You build systems and accountability structures that work whether you're in the room or not. You hire people you trust and give them authority to act. Marcus, you're trying to be everywhere all the time because you're afraid that if you're not, it'll all fall apart. That's not sustainable. You'll burn out in 6 months, and then what? Everything you built collapses because you made yourself the single point of failure? Marcus knew his uncle was right. He'd made the classic founder mistake, believing that only he could do things correctly, that only his vision mattered, that letting go meant losing control. I don't know how to trust other people with this, Marcus said quietly. What if they make the wrong decisions? What if they slip back into the old patterns? Then you course correct. That's leadership. You don't prevent all mistakes. You build recovery mechanisms for when mistakes happen. And Marcus, they will happen. You will make wrong decisions. Your team will make wrong decisions. That's inevitable. The question is whether you build something resilient enough to survive and learn from those mistakes. The waiter arrived with their main courses. They ate in silence for a while, Marcus processing his uncle's words. There's something else, Marcus said finally. I keep thinking about Gregory, about how quickly everything he'd built came crashing down, how 1 week he was powerful, and the next he was nothing. What if that happens to me? What if I make one wrong move and everything collapses? Then you pick yourself up and rebuild, Raymond said simply. That's what we do. But Marcus, Gregory's downfall wasn't about one wrong move. It was about a pattern of wrong moves over years. He built his career on a foundation of bias and gatekeeping, and eventually that foundation cracked. You're building something different, something with actual integrity underneath the corporate polish. That's more resilient than you think. You really believe that? I believe in you, Raymond said. And more importantly, I believe in what you're trying to build. Not the bank, that's just infrastructure. I believe in the vision, the idea that we can create systems that serve people instead of extracting from them, that we can have institutions that actually mean their mission statements instead of using them as marketing copy. That's worth the exhaustion and the stress, and the moments when you want to quit. Marcus felt something loosen in his chest. Not relief, exactly, but recognition. This was hard because it mattered. It was overwhelming because it was important. And maybe that was okay. I'll try to delegate more, Marcus said. Start trusting my team. Stop trying to be in every meeting and make every decision. Good. Start tomorrow. Pick 3 things you're currently doing that someone else could do just as well. Hand them off. Then next week, pick 3 more. In a month, you'll have reclaimed enough time to actually think strategically instead of just reacting to whatever crisis is in front of you. They finished dinner and walked out into the night. The city was alive around them. People going to shows, couples on dates, workers heading home from late shifts. Normal life happening while Marcus built and stressed and wondered if any of it mattered. Can I ask you something? Marcus said as they reached the valet stand. Do you ever regret it? The path you took? The compromises you made? Raymond considered the question seriously. I regret the time I lost with family. I regret that your father died thinking I'd betrayed him. I regret that I became someone my mother wouldn't recognize. But the power I built? The network I created? The ability to make one phone call and change your life? No, I don't regret that. Because power is just a tool. It's what you do with it that determines whether it was worth the cost. And what am I doing with it? Marcus asked. Am I using it right? You're using it better than I ever did, Raymond said. And there was something like pride in his voice. You're using it to build instead of just accumulate. to serve instead of just profit, to change systems instead of just exploiting them. So yeah, nephew, you're using it right. They parted ways, and Marcus drove home feeling slightly less burdened. Not fixed, he was still exhausted and overwhelmed and uncertain, but clear about why he was doing this. Not for personal glory or revenge or even redemption, but because someone had to. Because if not him, then who? If not now, then when? 6 months later, Marcus sat in his office, reviewing the quarterly report that Patricia had prepared. 6 months as chairman. 28 businesses funded through the Community Investment Fund with a 96% on-time repayment rate. Over 200 applications processed through the remediation program with 83 approved loans totaling $18 million. Connect Black now had over 50,000 active business users and had facilitated over $100 million in transactions. The numbers were good, better than good, they were transformative. First Regional's stock price had recovered from its post-scandal dip and was now higher than before the acquisition. Customer satisfaction scores were up. Employee retention had improved. The bank was profitable, growing, and genuinely serving its community. Marcus had done it. He'd taken a broken institution and fixed it. He'd proven that ethical banking could also be profitable banking. He'd become exactly what he'd set out to be. So why did he still feel like something was missing? His phone buzzed. A text from his mother. "Sunday dinner. Your uncle is coming. Be there." Marcus smiled. 6 months of slowly rebuilding family bridges, of Sunday dinners that started awkward and gradually became easier, of his mother and Raymond finding their way back to something that wasn't forgiveness exactly, but wasn't hostility either, of Janine starting her own business with a loan from Marcus's fund, Marcus recusing himself from the decision, but watching with pride as she was approved on her merits alone. Another text, this one from Diane. "Meeting request from Gregory Whitmore. Says it's personal. Do you want me to decline?" Marcus stared at the message. Gregory Whitmore. He hadn't thought about the man in months. Hadn't wondered what happened to him after the termination and the scandal and the public humiliation. Accept it. "Next week sometime," Marcus typed back. Diane's response was immediate. "Are you sure? I can make an excuse." "I'm sure. Let me know when it's scheduled." The meeting was set for the following Thursday. Marcus spent the intervening days wondering why Gregory had reached out. Apology? Anger? Desperation? He'd prepared for all three possibilities, but when Gregory walked into his office, this office that had probably been Gregory's once, in some previous incarnation of this building, Marcus saw none of those things. He saw humility. Gregory had aged in 6 months. More gray in his hair, more lines around his eyes. He wore a decent suit, but not an expensive one. He carried himself with none of the arrogant confidence that had defined him during their first meeting. "Marcus," he said, extending his hand. "Thank you for seeing me." Marcus shook it and gestured to the sitting area, rather than making Gregory sit across the desk like a supplicant. They were past that particular power dynamic. "What can I do for you?" Marcus asked, genuinely curious. Gregory sat, hands folded in his lap, taking a moment to gather his thoughts. "I've been following what you've done with First Regional. The remediation fund, the community investment program, the integration with Connect Black. It's impressive. Genuinely impressive. Thank you. I also got a letter 2 months ago from your remediation fund, offering to review my lending decisions and compensate anyone I'd wrongly denied or given unfavorable terms to. I thought it was a joke at first, then I realized you were serious." "Patricia's very thorough," Marcus said. We wanted to make sure everyone who'd been harmed by the old practices had a chance at redemption. Even the loan officers who'd caused the harm, especially them, if they were willing to learn and change. Gregory was quiet for a moment. I've spent the last 6 months doing nothing but thinking about my career, about the decisions I made and why I made them, about the people I hurt and the opportunities I destroyed. I've been in therapy, actual therapy, not just talking to my golf buddies about how unfair life is. And I've come to realize something. What's that? I was exactly what you said I was. A gatekeeper who measured people by metrics that had nothing to do with their actual capability. I looked at skin color and accent and zip code and decided who was worthy. And I did it for so long with so little pushback that I started to believe my judgments were objective, that I was just being prudent and responsible when I was really being prejudiced and lazy. Marcus listened without interrupting. I've been working at a small credit union in a different state, Gregory continued. They hired me knowing my history, knowing what happened at First Regional. They hired me specifically because of it, actually. The CEO is a black woman who thinks people deserve second chances if they're genuinely willing to change. So I've been there for 4 months, working as a loan officer, not a manager, just a regular loan officer, and doing things differently. How so? I read the full applications. I look at the business plans. I meet with the applicants and ask about their vision, their strategy, their understanding of their market. I evaluate them on merit instead of assumptions. And you know what I've discovered? Tell me. I've discovered that I'm actually better at my job when I'm not filtering everything through bias. That the businesses I'm approving now are stronger and more viable than half the businesses I approved in my previous career. That merit is a better predictor of success than pedigree. That you were right about literally everything you said to me that day at the press conference. Marcus didn't say anything for a moment. He'd expected apology or defensiveness or self-justification. He hadn't expected genuine transformation. "Why are you telling me this?" Marcus asked finally. "Because I owe you an apology that goes deeper than what I said at the press conference. I denied you not because your application was weak, but because I was. I let my biases override my professional judgment. I made assumptions about you that said everything about me and nothing about you. And I've spent 6 months learning how to be better. I wanted you to know that. To know that your confrontation, your takeover, your restructuring, it didn't just change First Regional, it changed me. So this is a thank you? This is an acknowledgement. You didn't have to include me in the remediation program. You didn't have to offer me any path to redemption. You could have destroyed me completely and been justified in doing it. Instead, you built something that made space for people like me to change. That's real leadership, the kind I never demonstrated." Marcus stood and walked to the windows, looking out at the city. Somewhere down there, businesses were starting with loans from his fund. Entrepreneurs who looked like him were getting chances they wouldn't have gotten 6 months ago. Systems were changing, slowly but genuinely. "I'm going to tell you something my uncle told me," Marcus said, turning back to Gregory. "Power is just a tool. It's what you do with it that determines whether it was worth the cost. You had power at First Regional. You used it to reinforce systems that kept people out. Now you don't have that power anymore, but you have something potentially more valuable. You have insight into why those systems were wrong and how to build better ones." Gregory nodded slowly. "The question is what you do with that insight," Marcus continued. "Do you coast through your credit union job and eventually rebuild your reputation and move back into management and forget everything you learned? Or do you use your experience, all of it, including the failure, to help build something better?" "I want to build something better," Gregory said. "That's why I'm here. Not just to apologize, but to ask if there's any way I can help with what you're doing. I'm not asking for a job. I know that would be inappropriate, but I have 30 years of banking experience. I understand the industry, and I understand now what I was doing wrong. If there's any way I can contribute to what you're building, even as a consultant or advisor or just someone who learns from your model and implements it elsewhere, I'd like to do that. Marcus studied him. Was this genuine? Or was it a play? A way for Gregory to rehabilitate his reputation by associating with Marcus's success? But looking at the man sitting in front of him, diminished, humble, genuinely struggling to articulate something real, Marcus decided it didn't matter. Even if Gregory's motives were mixed, even if part of this was self-interest, the outcome could still be positive. "I'll think about it," Marcus said finally. "I can't promise anything, but I'll talk to my team about whether there's a role for someone with your experience who's willing to admit past mistakes and work to correct them." That's actually valuable. Someone who can speak to other loan officers and managers about how bias operates and why it's both wrong and bad business. "I'd do that," Gregory said eagerly. "I'd speak to anyone, share my story, help train people to avoid the mistakes I made. Then let me discuss it with Patricia and Gloria and see if there's something that makes sense. I'll have Diane reach out to you either way." Gregory stood, extending his hand again. "Thank you, Marcus, for seeing me, for considering this, for not making me your villain permanently." "I never made you my villain," Marcus said. "You were just someone who made bad decisions inside a bad system. The real villain was the system itself. I've just been trying to build a better one." After Gregory left, Marcus sat in his office and thought about circles. How Gregory had denied him, and Marcus had replaced him, and now Gregory was asking to help Marcus build what should have existed all along. How his father had worked himself to death, following rules that never rewarded him, and his uncle had broken those rules and built power from the pieces, and Marcus was somewhere in between, using that power to create new rules that might actually be fair. How everything that seemed like an ending was really just another beginning. His phone buzzed. "Raymond, heard Gregory Whitmore was just in your office. Want to tell me why you're meeting with the man who denied you? How do you even know that? Does Diane report to you?" "Diane reports to the bank, and I'm a major investor, but also, yes, she texts me when interesting things happen. So?" So he apologized, genuinely, and asked if he could help with what we're building. "And you said?" "I said I'd think about it." Raymond was quiet for a moment. "You're a better man than I am, nephew." Raymond was quiet for a moment. "You're a better man than I am, nephew. I would have told him to go to hell." "What would that accomplish?" Marcus asked. "He's already been to hell. He lost his career, his reputation, his sense of who he was. Making him suffer more doesn't help anyone, but helping him become someone different, that actually changes something." "You sound like your mother." "Good. Someone in this family should," Raymond chuckled. "Fair enough. Listen, I'm calling because there's a situation developing. Another bank, Coastal Federal, 3 states over, has a similar profile to what First Regional had. Discriminatory lending patterns, outdated leadership, vulnerable to acquisition. Some of my contacts are putting together a play. They want to know if you'd be interested in replicating what you did here." Marcus felt his stomach tighten. "You want me to run multiple banks? I want you to build a model that scales. What you've done at First Regional is impressive, but it's one institution. Imagine if you could transform 10 banks, 20. Imagine a network of financial institutions that actually serve their communities instead of extracting from them. That's not just business, Marcus. That's a movement. I'm barely keeping my head above water with one bank. Which is why I said you need to delegate. Build a team. Create systems. You can't personally run 20 banks, but you can set the vision and standards and let other people execute. That's what empires are built on. replicable systems that work whether the founder is in the room or not. Marcus walked to his windows again, looking out at the city that had rejected him and then embraced him and was now asking for more. Always more. More vision, more work, more sacrifice, more transformation. "Can I be honest with you?" Marcus said quietly. "Always. I'm tired, Uncle Ray. I'm exhausted. I'm trying to be chairman and CEO and visionary and role model and symbol, and I don't know if I have it in me to expand this, to take on more, to become whatever you're asking me to become." "Then don't," Raymond said simply. "Take a year. Consolidate what you've built at First Regional. Make sure it's sustainable. Then decide if you want to grow it or if you want to stay focused on one institution. There's no shame in either choice. Marcus, you've already accomplished more than most people do in a lifetime. You don't owe anyone expansion, but you're asking for it. I'm offering it. There's a difference. I'm showing you a path that exists if you want to walk it. But Marcus, I'm not your father. I'm not going to die disappointed if you choose differently than I would choose. You've already made me proud. Whatever you do next is gravy." Marcus felt something release in his chest. Permission to be enough. Permission to not always be reaching for the next thing. Permission to just be Marcus for a moment instead of Chairman Bennett, symbol of transformation and hope. "Let me think about it," Marcus said. "Let me finish this year at First Regional. Make sure we're actually sustainable and not just riding a wave of good press. Then I'll tell you whether I'm ready to expand or whether I need to focus on depth instead of breadth." "Fair enough. One more thing. Your mother invited me to Thanksgiving." "She what?" "Surprised me too. She said, and I quote, 15 years is long enough for anyone to be in timeout. Come eat turkey and stop being a stranger. So I'm coming. Fair warning." Marcus laughed, genuine and surprised. "That's going to be interesting." "That's one word for it. See you next week, nephew." Marcus hung up and sat with the idea of Thanksgiving with his whole family, mother, sister, uncle, all the complicated history and love and resentment gathered around one table. It felt impossible and necessary in equal measure. His office door opened and Diane stuck her head in. "Sorry to interrupt, but there's a young woman in the lobby. Says she doesn't have an appointment but needs to speak with you. Normally, I'd turn her away, but she's persistent. Says her name is Keisha Williams, and you approved her loan application last month." Marcus remembered the application, a young woman, 26, wanting to open a natural hair care salon in a neighborhood that had been redlined for decades. Solid business plan, clear market demand, but no collateral and limited credit history. The old First Regional would have denied her instantly. The new First Regional approved her for $75,000. "Send her up," Marcus said. 5 minutes later, Keisha Williams walked into his office, and Marcus immediately understood why Diane had described her as persistent. She carried herself with the kind of determination that came from having to fight for everything. Mid-20s, natural hair in elaborate braids, wearing clothes that were professional but clearly not expensive. "Mr. Bennett," she said, extending her hand with confidence that didn't quite hide nervousness. "Thank you for seeing me. I know you're busy. I promise I'll be quick." "Take your time," Marcus said, gesturing to the sitting area. "How's the salon coming along?" "That's why I'm here." Keisha pulled out her phone, scrolling through photos. "I wanted you to see what your loan made possible." She showed him pictures of a storefront being renovated, walls painted in warm colors, salon chairs being installed, a sign being hung with elegant lettering, "Crown and Glory Natural Hair Studio." "We open next month," Keisha said, and her voice was thick with emotion. 3 years I've been trying to make this happen. 3 years of going to banks and being told I wasn't ready, didn't have enough experience, needed more collateral. 3 years of working 2 jobs and living with my grandmother and saving every penny. And then, Your fund approved me in 2 weeks. You had a strong application, Marcus said. Clear vision, solid market research, realistic financial projections. You deserved the approval. Maybe, but other banks didn't see it that way. They saw a black girl from the hood with a dream about doing hair. They didn't see a businesswoman with a plan. You did. Or at least, your system did. It's supposed to, Marcus said. That's the point of changing how we evaluate applications. To look at potential instead of prejudice. Keisha wiped her eyes. Sorry, I didn't come here to cry at you. I came to say thank you. And to ask if you'd come to the grand opening, not as chairman or as some VIP, but as someone who believed in me when nobody else did. I want you to see what you made possible. Marcus felt something shift inside him. This was why it mattered. Not the quarterly reports or the stock prices or the media coverage, but this. One person getting a chance they deserved. One dream becoming real because someone finally looked past biases and saw potential. I'll be there, Marcus said. Absolutely. Thank you, Keisha said, standing. And Mr. Bennett? There's like 50 other business owners in my neighborhood who are watching what I'm doing. If this works, when this works, they're all going to apply to your fund. You're changing our community. I need you to know that. You're changing lives. After she left, Marcus sat in his office and cried. Not from sadness, but from the overwhelming weight of actually mattering, of making a difference that was real and measurable and human. His phone buzzed. A text from his sister. Mom says you're bringing someone to Thanksgiving? Who? Marcus smiled through tears. Just me. Why? She's setting an extra place. Won't say who for. Being all mysterious. Marcus called his mother. She answered on the third ring, sounding distracted like she always did when she was cooking. Marcus, baby, I'm in the middle of making my mac and cheese. What do you need? Janine says you're setting an extra place for Thanksgiving. Who's coming? Oh, that. Don't worry about it. Just someone I invited. Someone who should be there. Mom, I'm running a bank now. I'm very busy and important. I don't have time for mysterious dinner guests. Evelyn laughed. You're so dramatic. Fine. If you must know, I invited Gregory Whitmore's ex-wife, Linda. She goes to my church. Been coming for about 3 months now. She's alone for the holidays, and I figured she could use some family. Marcus nearly dropped his phone. You invited Gregory Whitmore's ex-wife to Thanksgiving? The situation with Mom, why? Because she's not responsible for her ex-husband's mistakes. Because she's a kind woman going through a difficult divorce. Because our faith teaches us to welcome strangers and show grace. Should I keep going? Does she know who I am? Of course she knows. She's the one who suggested it, actually. Said she'd been wanting to thank you for how you handled everything with Gregory. How you didn't destroy him even though you could have. How your approach to the whole situation made her ex-husband actually face what he'd done instead of just becoming bitter and resentful. Marcus sat down, processing this information. So Thanksgiving is going to be me, you, Janine, Uncle Raymond, who you haven't spoken to in 15 years, and the ex-wife of the man who denied me a loan before I bought his bank and fired him. And Janine's new boyfriend Marcus, who you haven't met yet. This is going to be the most awkward Thanksgiving in the history of Thanksgiving. Or it's going to be real, Evelyn said. Real and messy and complicated. Like life actually is. Like family actually is. Not some sanitized version where we pretend painful things didn't happen. But where we acknowledge them and sit with them and break bread together anyway. When did you become so wise? I've always been this wise, baby. You just started listening. Evelyn's house, technically her rental, but she'd lived there long enough that everyone called it her house, was too small for 6 adults. The dining table was squeezed into the living room, extended with a folding table that didn't quite match. Mismatched chairs surrounded it. The food was spread across every available surface: turkey, ham, mac and cheese, greens, yams, dressing, cranberry sauce, 3 kinds of pie. It looked perfect. Marcus arrived first, bringing wine he'd picked out with help from a sommelier, because apparently that was his life now, having sommeliers. Janine came next with Marcus, boyfriend Marcus, not Chairman Marcus, which was going to be confusing, a shy software engineer who looked terrified. Raymond arrived in a car that cost more than most people's houses, wearing a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than the meal. He carried flowers and a bottle of bourbon that was older than Marcus. And Linda Whitmore arrived last, carrying a pecan pie she'd made herself, looking nervous and hopeful in equal measure. They all stood in Evelyn's small living room for a moment. This collection of people who shouldn't fit together, who had no reason to be breaking bread except that Evelyn Bennett had decided they would. "Well," Evelyn said, looking at her assembled guests, "isn't this something? Raymond, it's good to see you. Linda, thank you for coming. Everyone else, stop looking so scared. It's just dinner. Nobody's going to die. The night is young," Raymond muttered, but he was smiling. They sat. Evelyn said grace, a long, rambling prayer that thanked God for family and second chances and uncomfortable conversations that led to growth. Then they ate, and slowly, miraculously, the awkwardness began to ease. Raymond and Janine talked about her business, which was taking off faster than anyone expected. Boyfriend Marcus and Chairman Marcus bonded over coding and tech. Linda and Evelyn discussed church activities and recipes. And then, inevitably, the conversation turned to the elephant in the room. "I owe you an apology," Linda said to Marcus during a lull in conversation. "For my ex-husband, for what he put you through, for the system he was part of." "You don't owe me anything," Marcus said. "You're not responsible for his choices." "Maybe not, but I was married to him for 23 years. I watched him become what he became. I saw the casual dismissals, the assumptions, the way he talked about certain clients when he came home. And I didn't challenge it. I didn't push back. I just accepted it as normal." "We all accept things as normal until we don't," Raymond said quietly. "That's how systems perpetuate." "Gregory is in therapy now," Linda continued. "Real therapy, working on understanding his biases and where they came from. He talks about you a lot, Marcus, about how you could have destroyed him but didn't, about how you're building something that should have existed all along. I think losing everything was the best thing that ever happened to him. He finally had to face himself. Sometimes people need to lose everything to find something real," Evelyn said, looking at Raymond. "Sometimes they need to go away and come back different." Raymond met her eyes. "Sometimes they do. And sometimes they hope their family will still be there when they get back." "Family's always there," Evelyn said firmly. "Even when we're mad. Even when we're hurt. Even when we don't talk for 15 years. That's what family means." "So I'm forgiven?" Raymond asked, and there was vulnerability in his voice Marcus had never heard before. "Your family," Evelyn corrected. "Forgiveness is ongoing. But you're at my table. That's a start." They ate and talked for hours, told stories, laughed, argued about politics and football, and whether sweet potato pie was better than pecan. It was, objectively, Marcus argued, which started a whole debate. They were loud and messy and real in a way that Marcus's corporate dinners never were. At one point, Marcus stepped outside for air. The November evening was cool, the sky clear. He stood on his mother's small porch and thought about circles again, about how a year ago he'd been struggling to get a loan, and now he was running a bank, about how Gregory had denied him, and now Gregory's ex-wife was inside his mother's house eating pie, about how Raymond had left the family, And now he was inside making everyone laugh with stories from his mysterious life about how nothing was simple or clean, but somehow it was all working. "You okay out here?" Janine asked, joining him on the porch. "Yeah, just thinking. About? About how weird life is. How a year ago I thought I knew what success looked like, thought I knew who the good guys and bad guys were, thought everything was simple. And now? Now I realize nothing's simple. Raymond helped me, but his money isn't clean. I got revenge on Gregory, but now I'm watching him become a better person. I have power and success, but I'm exhausted and uncertain. Everything's complicated." Janine leaned against the porch railing. "You know what Mom would say? She'd say that's life. That's being human. The easy stories are for movies. Real life is messy and complicated and full of people who are both good and bad simultaneously. The question isn't whether things are simple. It's whether you're doing the best you can with the complexity." "And am I? Doing the best I can?" "Yeah," Janine said. "You're changing lives, Marcus. That girl who came to see you, Keisha, she called me, said she's hiring me to do her business's accounting, said you referred her. You're not just changing individual lives. You're building networks, communities, systems that create opportunities for more people. That's success that matters." "It doesn't always feel like enough?" "It never does. That's how you know you're doing important work. If it felt easy and complete, it probably wouldn't matter much." They stood together in comfortable silence until Raymond opened the door. "You two coming back in? Your mother's about to tell embarrassing childhood stories, and I need witnesses." They went inside. Listened to Evelyn tell stories about Marcus as a serious child who tried to organize his toys alphabetically, about Janine who once tried to give the family dog a medical exam, about Raymond as a young man, before he left, when he used to fix everyone's cars and didn't charge them because that's what family did. Stories that made them all human instead of symbols or successes or failures. Just people trying to navigate complicated lives. Around 10 p.m., guests started leaving. Raymond hugged Evelyn, actually hugged her, and Marcus heard his uncle whisper, "Thank you for letting me come home." Linda hugged Marcus and said, "You're doing something important. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." Boyfriend Marcus shook Chairman Marcus's hand and said, "Your family is amazing. Janine's lucky." And then it was just Marcus, Janine, and Evelyn, cleaning up the wreckage of a successful dinner. "That was good," Evelyn said, washing dishes while Marcus dried. "Complicated, but good." "You orchestrated that whole thing, didn't you?" Marcus asked. "The guest list, the conversations. You set up some kind of emotional intervention." "I facilitated healing," Evelyn corrected. "There's a difference. You've all been so focused on business and success and changing systems that you forgot about changing yourselves. Tonight was about remembering you're human, that everyone is, even the people you're angry at. I'm not angry at Gregory anymore. I know, but you needed to face that, to see his ex-wife as a real person, to understand that your revenge had ripple effects beyond just him, to complicate your narrative about good guys and bad guys. You're very wise for someone who cleans church pews." "I'm wise because I clean church pews," Evelyn corrected. "You learn a lot about people when you're quiet and working and paying attention. You should try it sometime instead of always being in boardrooms making important decisions." Marcus kissed his mother's cheek. "I love you. I love you too, baby, and I'm proud of you, even when I'm worried about you. Both things can be true." 1 year later, Marcus stood in front of a conference room full of business owners, all of them Black, all of them recently funded through First Regional's Community Investment Fund. Keisha Williams sat in the front row, her salon now thriving, already hiring her third employee. Around her sat a contractor, a tech entrepreneur, a caterer, a bookstore owner, an app developer, all of them success stories. all of them proof that the system worked when you fixed the system. Thank you all for coming, Marcus said. I wanted to bring everyone together because you're not just individual success stories. You're a network. You're a proof of concept. You're what happens when access meets opportunity. And I want to talk to you about what's next. He clicked to the next slide, showing a map. First Regional's original locations in one state, highlighted in blue, 3 more states highlighted in green. We're expanding, not just growing First Regional, but replicating the model, acquiring other banks with similar discriminatory histories and transforming them the same way we transform this one, creating a network of financial institutions that actually serve their communities. The room buzzed with excitement. But here's the thing, Marcus continued. I can't do this alone. I need people who understand what we're building because they've lived it. So I'm looking for business consultants, community liaisons, advisory board members, people who've been through our funding process and can help design it better. People who know what entrepreneurs need because they are entrepreneurs, paid positions, real influence. Who's interested? Every hand in the room went up. Marcus smiled. This was what success actually looked like. Not one person rising, but everyone rising together. Not replacing the old gatekeepers with new ones, but tearing down the gates entirely and building something that didn't need gatekeepers. After the meeting, Marcus returned to his office where Patricia, Gloria, David, and Raymond were waiting. The expansion is approved, Gloria said. We close on Coastal Federal next month, Midwest Trust the month after. By end of year, you'll be chairman of 4 banks with combined assets of over $8 billion. And I've hired 3 regional directors to actually run them, Marcus added. All of them experienced bankers. All of them committed to the model. I'm not trying to be in every meeting anymore. I learned that lesson. Good, Raymond said. Because I have another opportunity. It's international this time. A banking consortium in South Africa wants to replicate what you've built. They want you to consult, 6 months, advisory role, help them design their version of the community investment model. Marcus looked at his uncle. South Africa? Think about it. Your model started here, but the problems you're solving are global. Imagine if you could export this. Create a movement that transcends borders. That shows financial inclusion is possible everywhere, not just in one American city. Marcus walked to his windows one more time. The city spread below him, familiar now. He could see First Regional's other branches from here, could see neighborhoods that were changing because people finally had access to capital, could see the ripple effects of one rejected loan application that had sparked all of this. Can I be honest? Marcus said to the room. Always, Raymond replied. A year ago, I wanted revenge. I wanted to make Gregory Whitmore feel small. I wanted to prove I deserved what he denied me. And I did that. I got my revenge. But somewhere along the way, it stopped being about Gregory and started being about something bigger, about actually fixing what was broken instead of just proving it was broken. That's called growth, Patricia observed. Maybe. Or maybe it's called realizing that revenge is hollow, but transformation is meaningful. That personal victory is satisfying, but systemic change is sustainable. Marcus turned back to face them. I'll do the South Africa consultation, but I need you all to promise me something. What? Gloria asked. Promise me we don't lose sight of why we're doing this. It's not about building a banking empire. It's about creating access. Every decision we make, every bank we acquire, every expansion we consider, the question has to be, does this create more opportunity for people who've been shut out? If the answer is no, we don't do it, no matter how profitable it might be. Agreed, David said immediately. Agreed, Patricia echoed. Obviously agreed, Gloria added. That's always been the plan. Raymond stood and put his hand on Marcus's shoulder. You know what the difference is between you and me, nephew? What? I built power so I could have it. You're building power so you can give it away. That's why this works. That's why people believe in what you're building. And that's why I'm going to make sure you have every resource you need to keep building it. Marcus's phone buzzed. A text from his mother. Sunday dinner. Bring the expansion plans. I want to review them. Marcus laughed and showed the message to Raymond. She wants to review your business plans? Raymond asked, incredulous. She says if I'm going to be making decisions that affect communities, the community should have input, and she's appointed herself community representative. Your mother terrifies me, Gloria said. Good, Marcus replied. She should terrify all of us. That's how we stay honest. 2 years after walking into Gregory Whitmore's office and being denied a loan, Marcus Bennett sat in a television studio preparing for an interview with a major financial news network. His book, Building Tables: How One Denied Loan Led to Banking Revolution, had just hit the New York Times bestseller list. First Regional and its sister institutions had funded over 1,500 businesses, creating an estimated 20,000 jobs. The model was being studied by economists, replicated by other institutions, and cited as proof that ethical banking could also be profitable banking. The interviewer, a sharp woman with a reputation for asking tough questions, settled into her chair across from Marcus. So, Mr. Bennett, let's talk about the narrative. A young black entrepreneur gets denied a loan, decides to buy the bank, and transforms it into a force for social good. It's almost too perfect. Some critics say it's manufactured, that it's more PR than substance. How do you respond? Marcus smiled. I'd say those critics should talk to the 1,500 business owners who've been funded, should look at the employment numbers in communities that were redlined for decades, should examine our default rates and profitability margins and customer satisfaction scores. The story is compelling, but the data is real. But you had advantages most denied entrepreneurs don't have. A wealthy uncle with connections, investors ready to back you, access to capital and power most people never see. Doesn't that undermine the narrative of pulling yourself up? Absolutely, Marcus agreed, and the interviewer looked surprised by his honesty. I didn't pull myself up. I was pulled up by my uncle's network, by investors who believed in the vision, by advisors who taught me what I didn't know. That's actually the point. The myth of individual success is just that, a myth. We all succeed because someone helped us. The question is whether that help is distributed fairly or whether it only flows to people who already have access. So, what's your solution? Democratize access. Stop pretending that networking and mentorship and capital connections are things individuals should have to figure out on their own. Build institutions that provide those things systematically to people who've been shut out. That's what we're trying to do at First Regional and our sister banks. We're not just funding businesses, we're building networks, creating mentorship programs, providing access to markets and resources. We're institutionalizing the advantages that wealthy people take for granted. And the revenge aspect? You fired Gregory Whitmore, the man who denied you. How do you reconcile that with your message of inclusion and second chances? Marcus paused, considering. Gregory lost his job because his discriminatory practices created liability for the institution, not because I was personally vindictive. But here's what I learned. Revenge is easy. Transformation is hard. I could have destroyed Gregory completely and felt justified doing it. Instead, we built something that made space for him to change. He's now working with other institutions, training loan officers on recognizing and correcting bias. His ex-wife has become a consultant for our community investment programs. Even the people who hurt us can become part of the solution if we create pathways for redemption instead of just punishment. That's remarkably forgiving. It's remarkably practical, Marcus corrected. Forgiveness isn't about being nice. It's about refusing to let other people's failures limit your vision of what's possible. Gregory didn't deserve forgiveness, but the communities we serve deserve a system that works. Those things aren't incompatible. The interview continued for another 20 minutes. Questions about expansion plans, about profitability, about scalability, about whether the model could work in different economic contexts. Marcus answered all of them with the confidence of someone who'd spent 2 years learning on the job, making mistakes, and figuring out what worked. When it was over and he was being unmiked, the interviewer said quietly, "Off the record, my sister applied to your fund. She was approved last month. She's opening a daycare center in a neighborhood that hasn't had one in 15 years. You're changing real lives, Mr. Bennett. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." Marcus left the studio and climbed into the car Diane had arranged. His phone was full of messages, investors wanting meetings, journalists requesting interviews, community organizations asking him to speak. Always more requests, always more demands on his time and attention. But there was also a text from Keisha. "Grand opening of second location next month. You better be there, Mr. Chairman." And one from his mother. "Saw your interview. You were good. But you need a haircut." And one from Gregory Whitmore. "Thank you for what you said about second chances. Still working to deserve mine." And one from Raymond. "Proud of you, nephew. Your father would be too, even if he'd never admit it." Marcus stared at that last message for a long time. His father, who'd worked himself to death playing by rules that never rewarded him. Who'd died disappointed and tired, and probably feeling like he'd failed. What would he think of what Marcus had built? Would he be proud of the success? Or troubled by the compromises? Probably both. That seemed to be the theme of everything Marcus did. Both things could be true. His phone rang. Janine. "Did you seriously tell the entire country that our family helps us succeed?" she asked without preamble. "Mom's getting calls from cousins we haven't talked to in years asking for business loans." Marcus laughed. "Tell them to apply through the fund like everyone else. Family doesn't get special treatment. You paid off my student loans. That was before I learned about institutional fairness. Also, you're my sister. Different rules apply." "Double standards much?" "Absolutely. How's your business?" "Growing faster than I can hire for. I need to bring on 3 more accountants by end of quarter." "Marcus, I'm going to have to turn clients away. Do you know how wild that is? 2 years ago I was worried I'd fail. Now I'm worried I'm succeeding too fast." "That's a good problem to have. Easy for you to say. You have a whole bank to back you up. I'm just one person trying to figure this out." "You're never just one person," Marcus said. "You have family, mentors, a network. Use them. That's the whole point of what we're building. Nobody has to figure it out alone anymore." After he hung up, Marcus directed the driver to take him not to his apartment or his office, but to a park in the neighborhood where he'd grown up. The same park where he used to play basketball with kids who couldn't afford summer camps. Where his father used to sit and watch him, tired from driving taxi shifts but present anyway. Marcus sat on the same bench his father used to occupy and looked at the neighborhood. It looked different now. New businesses opening, buildings being renovated, people walking with a certain energy that came from hope instead of just survival. Some of that was gentrification, inevitable and problematic, but some of it was genuine community investment. Businesses owned by people from the neighborhood, funded by Marcus's programs, creating wealth that stayed local instead of being extracted. Was it perfect? No. Were there still problems? Absolutely. Had Marcus solved systemic racism and economic inequality with a banking program? Of course not. But he'd moved the needle. He'd created opportunities. He'd proven that financial inclusion wasn't just morally right, but economically smart. He'd built something that would outlast his chairmanship. that would continue creating access long after he moved on to whatever came next. That had to count for something. "Made it, Dad," Marcus said quietly to the empty air. "Maybe not the way you would have done it. Maybe not clean enough for you to be comfortable with. But I made it, and I'm trying to use it right. Hope that's enough." The wind rustled through the trees. A group of kids played basketball on the same courts where Marcus had played 20 years ago. Somewhere in the distance, a business was opening with capital from Marcus's fund. Somewhere, an entrepreneur who looked like him was getting a chance they wouldn't have gotten 2 years ago. It wasn't everything, but it was something. And for now, that was enough. Marcus stood, straightened his suit, and walked back to the car. He had a dinner with Raymond and his mother scheduled for tonight. Tomorrow, a board meeting to discuss the South Africa expansion. Next week, 10 more meetings, 5 more interviews, 100 more decisions. The work never ended. The struggle never stopped. But now, at least, he wasn't fighting alone. He had resources. He had power. He had the ability to actually change things instead of just dreaming about it. And maybe that was what justice really looked like. Not perfect revenge or complete victory, but persistent progress. Not destroying the people who hurt you, but building systems that made it harder for them to hurt others. Not becoming the gatekeeper, becoming the person who tears down the gates. Some stories end with the hero triumphant, problems solved, lessons learned. But life isn't really like that. Marcus Bennett's story continues, messier, more complicated, more uncertain than any neat narrative arc. He makes mistakes. He trusts the wrong people sometimes. He gets tired and wants to quit. He compromises in ways that keep him up at night. He wonders if the power he wields is changing him into something he wouldn't recognize. But he also wakes up every morning and tries again. He funds businesses. He creates opportunities. He builds systems that work better than the ones that excluded him. He learns and adapts, and slowly, incrementally, makes things better. And maybe that's the real lesson. Not that one person can fix broken systems with determination and a dramatic takeover, but that change is possible when you combine power with purpose. When you refuse to let revenge be your endgame, and instead focus on transformation. When you remember that the opposite of being denied isn't just being approved, it's becoming the person who ensures no one else gets denied for the wrong reasons. That's not a Hollywood ending. It's a human one. And maybe that makes it more meaningful. Would you have forgiven Gregory Whitmore? Or would you have made him suffer more? Do you think people who've been part of discriminatory systems deserve second chances, or should they live with the consequences of their choices? Drop your thoughts below. I want to hear what you think about redemption, revenge, and what real justice looks like. Let's talk about it.